My daughter was smiling and waving at me as the train pulled away. It had been about 2 months since she last saw her dad, so she was excited to visit him. After she boarded the train, I sent a message to my husband to let him know she was on her way. About 4 hours after I got home, Sarah called me. I had told her to call when she arrived, so I assumed it was just a quick update. "Hi, Sarah, did you make it to San Francisco and meet your dad?" But instead of her usual cheerful tone, she sounded upset. "Mom, can you come pick me up?" What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed. "I didn't get to see Dad," she said. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, I haven't heard from him. When I went to his house, some strange woman answered and wouldn't let me in." "What?" "My name is Liddy, I'm 32, and I live with my husband, Robert, and our 11-year-old daughter, Sarah. I got pregnant with Sarah when I was still in college. It wasn't planned, but with support from my parents, I managed to finish school. After that, I became a full-time housewife. Robert always said he wanted to marry me, so we got married shortly after finding out about the baby. At first, things were a bit chaotic, and not everyone around us was supportive, but once Robert got a good job at a reputable company, things settled down. We were able to live in company housing, and financially, we were doing fine. We didn't really have a typical honeymoon phase, but we didn't care. Sarah was adorable, and Robert doted on her. On weekends, he would take care of her so I could relax and spend time with my friends. I didn't have to give up on my hobbies or dressing up, and life felt comfortable. The years flew by, and before I knew it, Sarah was in elementary school. Around that time, Robert got promoted, which meant longer hours at work. Even so, we made the most of our weekends, going on family trips and making memories. Life felt stable and happy. But then, everything changed. One day, Robert was told he had to transfer to another city for work. At first, he always turned down transfers because Sarah was too young, and we didn't want to uproot her life, but now she was 11, and that excuse wasn't enough anymore. This time, the job seemed critical to Robert's career. He told me it could determine his future at the company, and he couldn't refuse. We had to think about Sarah's future too: junior high, high school, college, and all the costs that would come with it. I realized we couldn't hold him back, so we agreed to the transfer, hoping it would lead to something better for all of us. I was told that my husband's assignment would last about 6 months. Well, 6 months isn't so bad, I thought. Still, my daughter really loved her dad and was worried about being away from him. Robert promised her he would call every day and try not to make her feel lonely. He said she could visit him on weekends too. I could see he cared about our family. Even though he was moving away, he was still going to make time for us. Sarah said, "I'll miss seeing Daddy, but I'll manage." We saw him off with smiles on our faces. After about 3 days, Robert called on video to talk to Sarah. It was nice to see them chatting. It made me laugh, because it seemed like he was the one acting like a child. It was heartwarming to see them so close. I could tell they had a strong bond. The first weekend, he couldn't visit because he was too busy, but the next week he made time and came home on Friday. I was so grateful that, despite his busy schedule, he still made time for us. Sarah was so happy to have dinner with her dad again after a long time. But about 2 months into his new life, things started to change. He used to call every 3 days for a video chat, but over time, those calls became less and less. Eventually, he stopped calling altogether. I understood. He was busy with work, living alone, and doing all the house chores. I thought once he got settled, he might start going out with his colleagues more, and things would get easier for him. I didn't want to pressure him, so I didn't insist on him keeping in touch more often. Still, he didn't contact me much, and when he did, it was brief. Eventually, he came home less and less. I told Sarah that her dad was just really busy with work, but I could see that she was sad, even though she didn't say anything about it. It wasn't a good situation, and even though I knew he was busy, I felt like something was wrong. I asked my husband to call Sarah, even if it was just for 5 minutes. She seemed so lonely at home. He apologized and said, "I'm sorry," but he still didn't call her. Sarah's birthday was coming up, and I hoped he'd come home to surprise her. She even said, "Maybe Daddy will come home." But on her birthday, he didn't come home, and he didn't even call to wish her a happy birthday. Sarah was really disappointed. I was so mad that I called him several times and left messages. Lately, When I called, he wouldn't pick up or return my calls, so this time, I called him again and again. Finally, on the fifth call, he picked up the phone. "What's wrong? You've been calling me a lot, haven't you?" he asked. I was angry. "What are you doing?" I said. "What?" he replied. "It's Sarah's birthday today, it's Saturday, and you didn't come home. You didn't even call to wish her a happy birthday," I snapped. "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry about that," he said. "Sarah hasn't seen her dad in so long, she was really hoping you'd come home for her birthday. Tell her I'm really sorry and wish her a happy birthday," he said. No matter what I said, all he did was apologize. I was fed up and hung up the phone. As I hung up, my anger flared up again. I thought, please think about your daughter and treat her better. You're busy, but this is too much. I sent him a message telling him just that. He replied with, "I understand, I'm sorry." But nothing changed. Another month went by, and Sarah started her summer vacation. She kept telling me that if her dad couldn't come to her, she'd go to him. She said this every day since summer vacation started. I decided to let her visit him on her own. She was excited about the idea and wanted to try something new. We live in Los Angeles, and Robert lives in San Francisco now. She could take a train there, so I drove her to the station. I called Robert to let him know that Sarah would be arriving in San Francisco. He agreed to pick her up. Finally, Sarah would get to see her dad again after a long time. On Saturday, I saw her off and headed home. As the train pulled away, she waved at me with a big smile. It had been 2 months since she last saw Robert, so I knew she was really looking forward to it. I sent a message to Robert right after Sarah got on the train. About 4 hours later, I got a call from Sarah. It was around noon, and since she had left early that morning, I assumed she had already met up with Robert and maybe even had lunch before calling me. I had told Sarah to call me when she arrived, so when the phone rang, I thought she was calling to update me. "Hello, Sarah, did you make it to San Francisco and meet your dad?" I asked. But her voice was upset. "Mom, come pick me up right now, please." What's wrong?" "I didn't see Dad." "What do you mean?" "I don't know, I haven't heard from him. When I went to his house, some strange woman turned me away." "What?" I was shocked. I needed to pick her up right away. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm back at the San Francisco station. I'm just sitting in a fast food restaurant, trying to pass the time." I immediately got in the car and drove to the station. Once I arrived, I bought a ticket and caught the next train to San Francisco. When I finally got there, Sarah was waiting for me, her eyes full of tears. We went to a nearby cafe, and I ordered some pancakes that were famous in the area. As soon as they came, Sarah's face brightened a little, and she seemed to calm down. I asked her what had happened. She explained that when she got to San Francisco station, she couldn't get in touch with Robert. She waited for about 30 minutes, but he never showed up, so she decided to go to his house by herself. I had given her his address, just in case something went wrong. Since she's good with smartphones, she quickly found her way there using a map. She took the train to Robert's place, and when she rang the doorbell, a woman's voice answered. "Who are you?" the woman asked. Sarah was surprised but said, "I'm here to see my dad." The woman told Sarah to go home because she was in the way and wouldn't let her see Robert. Then the woman hung up without opening the door. So, Sarah went back to the station. I was so angry that I couldn't hold it in anymore. "If she told you not to see your dad, then let's not see him," I said to Sarah. I took my daughter home and started preparing to leave. When I told my parents what happened, they were furious and said they'd help however they could. For now, my parents let us stay with them until I could find a job. Eventually, my husband called. "I didn't see Sarah at the station. Did something happen?" he asked. I figured his mistress didn't tell him she had turned Sarah away. I also doubted he even went to the station, since there had been no word from him when I picked up Sarah. I was stunned but decided to keep calm for now. Sarah got sick on the way there and had to turn around. I lied. "We just finished at the hospital. Sorry I couldn't call earlier." "Oh, I see, I understand," he replied. I ended the call and was seething with anger. It was so obvious he didn't really care. Well, let him dig his own grave. I'm done, I thought. After that, I started taking action. First, I packed up his things and sent them to his address. Then, I got the results of the investigation I had ordered from a private detective. I sent the proof of his affair, along with a certified letter, to his work. A few days later, my husband called, sounding furious. "What the hell are you doing?" he yelled. "Huh? What do you mean?" I said. "I just thought I'd let everyone know what you've been up to." "You've got to be kidding me, we're in the middle of a huge problem here," he snapped. "Of course, we are, that's what I was trying to fix," I said smugly. "By the way, I sent your stuff back because I don't need it, and I'm not paying rent on that apartment anymore." "What?" he asked, shocked. "Sarah and I moved out of that apartment," I said. "You left the apartment? When?" "About a month ago." "What? No one's lived there for a month, and we still had to pay rent?" "Well, yeah, but it's in your name, so that's your problem." "No," he shouted, "you're 2 months behind on rent now. I've been getting calls from an unknown number, I bet that's why. We'll be evicted." "Not my problem," I said coldly. "But we'll be in trouble if I lose the apartment. Why didn't you just stay there? And you sent a certified letter to my company. Do you know what you've done? They found out about my affair. They're replacing me and moving me back to Los Angeles. And now, because you sent my stuff back, I don't even have a place to live there." I almost laughed because everything had worked out better than I expected, but I kept calm and said, "You've hurt Sarah and me so much. Now, you're going to pay the price, and this isn't over." "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice shaking. "I'm filing for divorce, and I'll be demanding alimony and child support." "Oh, no. Let's just let the lawyers handle it and get this over with," I said, and then I hung up. I hired a lawyer, and everything went as planned. The divorce was finalized without any issues. I filed for alimony from my ex-husband and his mistress, as well as child support. My ex-husband became the center of a huge scandal after his affair was exposed, leading to his transfer back. He was made a joke at his company, female employees looked down on him, and his chances for promotion were gone. But he couldn't quit his job because he had alimony and child support to pay. He must have felt embarrassed every day. My daughter, disappointed in him, refused to see him even when he apologized and tried to meet with her. He deserved it. As for me, I found a job, and my daughter and I now live happily in a cozy apartment. I'm working hard to support her and excited to see her grow up.
I had envisioned a life in this house, just my mother and me, until my husband Todd unexpectedly announced otherwise. The surprise left me in disbelief as he declared, "I'll handle all the monthly expenses, so I need you to leave," firmly raising her voice. I was taken aback and bewildered by their sudden decision. The motives behind their actions only became clearer when my mother-in-law completed the condominium contractor's name change. My name is Summer, and at 34 years old, I lead a busy life. My father, who ran a small-town workshop, bestowed this name upon me due to my birth during the summer season. While it may seem basic, it carries my late father's deep love. His polishing skills were renowned in the industry, and despite tough times, I cherished the moments playing in the workshop as a child. However, the workshop faced financial difficulties, leading to my father's tragic end in the back of the shop during my elementary school years. To shield me, my mother and I left town to start a discreet life elsewhere. Unfortunately, the years of hardship took a toll on my mother's health, and she passed away during my high school years. Despite the despair, I channeled the courage to face life head-on, driven by an inner passion to showcase my father's skills to future generations. Working tirelessly, I managed to graduate high school with scholarship support, juggling numerous part-time jobs to afford daily expenses while studying engineering at the local public university. During my university days, I encountered Todd, a friendly young man who recognized and admired my skills. Unlike many others, he never looked down on me for being a woman, fueling my determination. After graduating, we began living together, sharing our lives. Todd efficiently managed household chores, providing immense support, especially on busy workdays. 6 years later, at 28, I contemplated reviving my father's small-town workshop, with Todd wholeheartedly supporting my dream. As we discussed the possibility of marriage frequently over these 6 years, my lifelong dream seemed poised to become a reality. However, my primary focus was on rebuilding my father's workshop before considering marriage. Todd respected this wish and patiently waited. To raise funds, I opted for crowdfunding, leveraging my position as a female engineer. I incorporated the uniqueness of my story into the advertising campaign, aligning with the societal shift towards increased support for women. Carefully planning and persistently securing funding and the right personnel, after 4 years of effort, I successfully revived the town workshop. Mindful of the financial struggles the old workshop faced, I introduced state-of-the-art equipment and gave the factory a modern and sophisticated design. By establishing facilities and systems conducive to women, I aimed to create a workplace that was both productive and female-friendly. These efforts quickly elevated the workshop's status to top tier within the industry. While some might perceive my success as luck, it was, in fact, the result of numerous challenges and tireless efforts. Todd, my university partner, knew this best. However, Todd's career faced challenges, and while his colleagues progressed, he remained a rank-and-file employee. Growing frustrated, he started expressing his dissatisfaction, saying coldly, "You're really lucky to have succeeded. There must be someone better for you than me, right?" I repeatedly reassured him that my success wouldn't have been possible without his unwavering support. I genuinely believed his involvement in my life and career was indispensable. To express my deep gratitude and love, I proposed marriage. I valued his special presence, pure and warm-hearted sensitivity, bringing happiness to my everyday life. Despite finding great comfort and solace in his presence, I began noticing changes in his heart over the 10 years since we became adults. My hope was to dispel his insecurities through marriage. Upon deciding to marry, we rushed to inform our families. Contrary to my expectations, Todd's family home was an old, decaying wooden house that raised concerns about its stability. When Todd's mother first saw me, she remarked, "You're the daughter of the wealthy business owner they often talk about," reflecting my past fundraising and media exposure. In the pursuit of success, I had emphasized the importance of first impressions, but the reality of Todd's family background differed from my expectations. I dedicated considerable time and effort to my attire and appearance, aiming for a suitable impression. However, from my mother-in-law's perspective, my outfit might have appeared flashy and excessive. She started speaking in a sarcastic tone, implying that I owed my appearance to Todd's assistance. Despite feeling grateful, I sensed tension as I entered their quiet old house. Todd seemed to have something on his mind, but remained silent. His father, in tattered clothes and with a restless demeanor, reflected the atmosphere of the home. Apologizing for the state of their house, he acknowledged its issues and conveyed that it might differ from the appearance of a wealthy household. Trying to calm myself, I internally took several deep breaths. Each time I made a casual remark, Todd's parents responded with comments about how rich people have different ways of thinking and values than common people like us, making genuine conversation difficult. Back at home, I asked Todd about his parents' views on wealth, and he shared surprising facts. Since childhood, he was taught that fancy apartment buildings were probably built on wrongdoing, and wealthy people engaged in shady dealings. They were believed to lack understanding of others' feelings or hardships, and Todd was advised to avoid befriending children from wealthy families. Although I hadn't grown up in a wealthy family myself, I found it intriguing to understand the roots of his parents' strong feelings. Even afterward, Todd's parents disapproved of our relationship. His mother often expressed concern about me making him do too much, while his father advised him not to let married life be completely dominated by his wife. These sentiments seemed to contribute to Todd's declining self-esteem. Behind my successful career was a desire to fulfill my late father's dream, not a wish to look down on others or use them. Despite Todd previously discussing this with his parents, my social success left a lasting impression on them. Attempting to improve our relationship, I communicated and tried to understand them multiple times. However, no matter how much goodwill I showed, Todd's father approached me with bias, saying, "This is how rich people think." Their reactions gradually closed off my heart. Meanwhile, as Todd visited his family more frequently due to his father's deteriorating health, we started distancing ourselves, even though we were married and living together. About 2 years later, he suddenly announced that he had decided to quit his job because he was too busy with things at home. I was infuriated that Todd made such a significant decision without discussing it with me first. At that point, our relationship had deteriorated into a mere formality, lacking meaningful and sincere communication. He claimed to be busy with housework, but in reality, he frequently visited casinos and racetracks. When I confronted him about his actions, Todd dismissively suggested hiring a professional housekeeper, stating that he wasn't my servant, and we had enough money to cover the expense. His words left me deeply shocked and at a loss for a response. Around that time, Todd's father's health worsened, and he passed away. 2 months after receiving this news, my mother-in-law and Todd visited my house, and he unexpectedly declared, "I plan to live in this house with my mother, just the two of us." Taken aback by this sudden statement, I stood there speechless. Todd went on to say, "I will pay the monthly rent, so I want you to leave." Shocked by this demand, I could only ask, "Wait a minute, are you really able to pay the rent, Todd?" Instead of a reasonable response, my mother-in-law yelled at me, expressing her anger and stating that she couldn't forgive me for belittling them. Todd, dissatisfied, sighed deeply, proclaiming that he wouldn't tolerate being bossed around anymore and intended to live life on his terms. Surprised by their intense attitude, I momentarily lost my words. Reflecting on their past actions and words, I realized that dealing with them would be extremely challenging. I responded firmly, "I understand. I will leave this house next month." Unsatisfied, my mother-in-law pushed for an even quicker departure, demanding, "Can't you just get the hell out of here and leave next week? I'm being ready for my new life, and I've already arranged for my stuff to be delivered to my new house." Her abrupt demands puzzled me, considering I had just decided to leave. Unable to comprehend her reasoning or course of action, I hesitated. In response, my mother-in-law raised her voice even more, asserting, "Someone as wealthy as you should leave them moving to professionals, right?" She repeated a sarcastic phrase, implying that she viewed the wealthy as something special or different. Initially, I considered it proper for them to move to a new place since I was the one who contracted for the house. However, my mother-in-law continued to assert strongly, "This house belongs to Todd. No matter how much you earn, I won't allow you to hide that fact." Behind her words, I sensed a message that my higher income shouldn't make me feel superior to Todd. Looking at Todd's changed and gloomy expression, I questioned why I had invested so much time in such a person. In this unbearable situation, where living with them seemed insufferable, and I wanted to avoid sharing the same space, breathing the same air, I concluded that it was time to seriously consider divorce. Understood. This weekend, I'll proceed with the moving arrangements, handling all necessary document changes and procedures. When I responded in a soft tone, Todd and his mother exchanged glances, smirking triumphantly, as if a long battle had ended, and they had finally won. Immediately, I began searching for vacancies in apartments and condos, also looking for a reliable moving company amidst my busy days, including work-related business trips. Returning home, I found Todd deep in sleep, seemingly ignoring my existence. On the weekend, he calmly signed the divorce papers without displaying any emotion. Meanwhile, his mother was receiving explanations from the real estate agent about the rental agreement and signing the contract. I was particularly concerned about whether she truly understood the high rent of $66,000. After completing all the procedures, I found myself walking alone toward a new place with a high-rise condo behind me. The new apartment, a one-bedroom with secure surroundings, was perfect for me living alone. During the move, I decided to discard many unnecessary things, clearing both my room and my mind for a fresh start. Decorating the space to my liking was an enjoyable time for me, gradually immersing myself in the new lifestyle. Thoughts of Todd and his family started to fade, although I couldn't completely erase them from my mind. reflecting on the memories with Todd and the challenging times we had overcome together. I never imagined our relationship would end this way, especially during our university days when we struggled financially. We supported each other's livelihood. The strain that developed over time was deep and immeasurable. However, I later came across shocking information when I coincidentally reunited with a university friend. She told me rumors of Todd flaunting around in city clubs. Also, a former neighbor from where I used to live mentioned seeing my ex-mother-in-law frequently entering and exiting a luxury foreign car. They described them wearing unfamiliar luxurious fur clothes and speaking completely differently than before. Hearing about their lavish lifestyle, I couldn't believe they'd once looked down on the wealthy. Particularly after I had distanced myself from that life, I saw how much they had transformed. Then, unexpectedly, 2 months later, I received a call from Todd. "I really need your help." His voice conveyed a level of desperation I had never heard before. I had not expected to hear from him in such a manner after our one-sided relationship ended. "Actually, we've gotten ourselves into some unexpected trouble." What exactly happened? Todd's response indicated that the events had begun 3 months prior. He was shocked to learn the astonishing truth through a call from his mother. "I hit the jackpot in the lottery. Can you believe $30 million? She had apparently been buying lottery tickets in the past, and this time she had won an amount beyond her wildest dreams. "Is that really true, or is it a joke?" Todd asked her to confirm. After checking the lottery numbers multiple times herself, the ex-mother-in-law assured, "There's no mistake. I've checked it over and over. We are so unbelievably rich now. Now we can face those upper-class people with no problem. Truly, God has blessed us." She spoke with elation, lifting her spirits. Moved by these words, Todd was in tears, and his mother added, "With this amazing stroke of luck, you can escape from that woman's clutches. Have you heard? She seems to be frolicking around with some young guy now. Such a woman should be kept at a distance." These words pushed Todd further, and his pent-up anger and frustration boiled over. "Now that we've acquired wealth, I won't be controlled by her. We won't have anything to do with her anymore," he declared with a trembling voice, informing me of our disconnection. It became evident that during these events, a common goal had emerged between them to completely exclude me. Subsequently, they began a lavish lifestyle in a downtown luxury condo, seemingly spending extravagantly every day. Todd used his savings liberally, and the ex-mother-in-law spent her late husband's inheritance without any reservations. Excited, they decided to go to the nearest bank to cash in the lottery ticket. However, at the bank, they faced a shocking truth. The lottery ticket they brought was from the previous year. Disbelief and dismay spread across their faces. It turned out the ex-mother-in-law had been comparing last year's lottery ticket with this year's winning numbers. Amidst this commotion, there was a deep-seated fear that somehow I would take their wealth from them. Surprised upon hearing their story, I was at a loss for words. "That's truly unfortunate and sad." I conveyed my sympathy. Just as I was about to end the call, Todd spoke up again, asking, "But we should have a right to alimony, right?" Continuing to claim without any basis, he added, "You were cheating, right? On that fact alone, we should be able to claim alimony." Explaining his situation, Todd felt stressed about the house and believed he had the right to demand alimony. However, it was clear in my memory that Todd had quit his job on his own accord. My emotions surged, and I couldn't tolerate such baseless claims. "I can't believe you would say such a thing, you sleazy man. Are you for real?" I raised my voice involuntarily. In this moment, my usual calm judgment and strong resilience frayed. Perhaps sensing my anger, I could feel Todd's surprise and confusion over the phone. "Truly, it's me who should be seeking alimony. You only think about yourself, heartlessly kicking me out always. That want-to-be-rich spiel, I heard it so many times. Why do you and your mother complain so much? I can't tolerate this attitude of just being jealous without making any effort." I continued with an emotional outburst. After my emotional outburst, there was a moment of silence. Then, I felt a sense of clarity and hung up the phone. Their mistake with the lottery ticket astounded me, but now it was none of my business. Whatever fate they met was irrelevant to me. Days later, as I walked in front of my factory, I saw my ex-mother-in-law in a visibly deplorable state. She appeared before me and began to prostrate. "Please help me. We can't afford to return the $66,000. Please come back and be a part of our family again." That should have been clearly written in the documents. Why didn't you check them thoroughly? Didn't you understand how serious it all was? And about that lottery ticket, I murmured slowly, choosing my words carefully. Will you truly abandon a mother and child struck by such misfortune? After a pause, I shook my head calmly and said, I believe that luck, in many cases, is something you forge for yourself despite hardships. I have strived to carve out my own destiny. How much of that mindset did you have? My words left her with a surprised and somewhat regretful expression. Struggling to find a response, I walked past her and started walking in the direction of the building. After a short walk, I turned around to find my former mother-in-law still standing there. But I never looked back again and kept walking, focused on the path ahead. As expected, Todd and his mother were eventually evicted from the luxury condo. They chose an old wooden shack as their new dwelling, having spent all their savings. Now, they spend their days working various part-time jobs to support themselves and save for the future. Over the following years, I dedicated myself to my work, and my factory grew far beyond its original small-town scale. I secured funds to purchase a larger plot of land nearby and established a new state-of-the-art factory there. This newly built facility was designed with the comfort of the entire family in mind, complete with maternity leave and childcare facilities for employees. Although my parents were not able to witness this success in person, every time I see a smiling couple with their children visiting the factory, I remember myself as a child and feel a deep sense of relief and happiness at the sight of them.
Hello, I'm Patricia, a 34-year-old navigating the everyday challenges of work and motherhood. For most of my life, romance took a backseat, but as I entered my 30s, my parents grew increasingly concerned about my single status. That's when they introduced me to William. He seemed like the perfect match, devoted to his family, which aligned with my own values. We got married, and for a while, it felt like a real-life fairy tale. However, 8 months into our marriage, everything changed. One day, William called me multiple times, sounding utterly drained. When I finally reached him, he delivered devastating news. His father, Paul, had collapsed at home and was rushed to the hospital. Tragically, Paul passed away, leaving a significant void in our lives, especially for William's mother, who was now alone in her grief. William stepped up, dedicating his time to her, taking her out, and planning trips to help her cope. Then, I won a trip to Hawaii through a contest. Instead of viewing it as a chance for us to reconnect and heal, William seized the moment to manipulate me. He insisted that unless I let him and his mother go on the trip without me, he would threaten divorce. His mother appeared to be perfectly fine with this arrangement, while I felt sidelined and used. Determined not to be undermined, I decided to stand my ground. I wouldn't just accept their plans without a fight. This situation revealed an unexpected side of William, one willing to use emotional blackmail to get what he wanted. It was disheartening, but it also strengthened my resolve to confront the dynamics of our relationship and prioritize my own happiness. While he didn't completely neglect me, whenever our plans conflicted with his commitments to his mother, he always chose her. His typical responses were, "Sorry, Patricia, Mom needs me," or "We planned this with Mom a long time ago." I outwardly agreed, but inside, I simmered with frustration. Why was I always the one bending? Wasn't his mother being too demanding? Despite these issues, William's closeness to her was undeniable, and aside from this tension, our marriage seemed stable. I convinced myself that this was just the norm for some families. In the midst of it all, I found solace in crossword puzzles that offered prizes. It became my escape during the times William was occupied with his mom. Occasionally, I even won gift cards or meals, which were nice bonuses. Then one day, I struck gold. I won 2 tickets to Hawaii. I was ecstatic, double-checking the win multiple times before considering travel arrangements. Initially, I thought about inviting William but hesitated, knowing his tendency to include his mother in our plans. After some reflection, I decided the tickets would be a perfect gift for my parents. On my way home, I stopped by their house to share the exciting news. Bursting with joy, I exclaimed, "Mom, guess what? I won tickets to Hawaii." Her eyes lit up with surprise and happiness. "Wow, that's fantastic. You and William must be thrilled," she replied. I paused for a moment, then said, "Actually, I want you and Dad to have them," I said, watching as my mom's expression shifted from astonishment to warmth, clearly touched by my gesture. Her voice, filled with surprise and delight, asked, "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," I replied. "William travels enough as it is. I want you and Dad to enjoy this opportunity." My mom's face lit up with joy, but I noticed a flicker of concern on Dad's face. "What's wrong?" I asked, catching his worried expression. "Well, it's a busy time of year at the company. I'm not sure I can take time off right now," he explained apologetically. "That's unfortunate," I sighed, feeling a mix of disappointment and understanding. Then Dad brightened with a suggestion. "Why not take Amy instead? It was your prize originally, right? You should go and have some quality time together." Mom nodded enthusiastically, clearly excited by the idea. "That sounds wonderful." Feeling a renewed sense of excitement, I applied for leave the next day, and it was quickly approved. I called the airline to arrange for the tickets to be used by Amy and me. On my way home from work, I stopped by a bookstore to pick up a guidebook for Hawaii. It had been ages since Mom and I had traveled together, and I was genuinely looking forward to it. When I arrived home, expecting the house to be empty, I was surprised to find the lights on. I had assumed William was still out, but instead of his shoes, I saw a familiar pair of women's shoes by the entrance. Puzzled, I walked in to find Kelly emerging from the living room. "Patricia, do you know what time it is?" she scolded as soon as she saw me. "Oh, Kelly, I didn't realize you were here," I replied, taken aback by her tone. "It's not just about me being here. It's late and William will be back soon," she continued, her voice sharp with reproach. "I'm sorry. I'll start on dinner right away," I apologized, rushing toward the kitchen. But Kelly wasn't finished. She launched into a critique of my absence, making it clear she expected more from me in managing the household. Her words stung, reminding me of the tightening boundaries in my life that I was increasingly determined to push back against. With a heavy sigh, Kelly questioned my commitment as a daughter-in-law, attributing my perceived shortcomings to my job. According to her, my priorities should place home far ahead of work. She often used her spare key to drop in unannounced, especially since she lived close by. Kelly clung to outdated notions about a daughter-in-law's role, expecting me to serve William and his family without objection. Her persistent critiques made it harder for me to feel any warmth toward her. As I unpacked groceries and began preparing dinner, Kelly's voice pierced the air with sudden urgency. "Wait, what's this? Patricia, are you planning a trip to Hawaii?" She had stumbled upon the guidebook. I had just purchased a few things when I noticed Kelly rummaging through my belongings. "Why are you going through my things?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. "That's not the point. Why are you planning a trip to Hawaii?" she demanded sharply. "I won the trip in a contest and was planning to give it to my mom," I explained, trying to keep my cool. "I haven't heard anything about this. Why should I?" Kelly snapped back, her demeanor confrontational. Before our argument could escalate, William walked in. Kelly wasted no time informing him of her discovery, pointing at me with an accusatory finger. "Patricia is being thoughtless," she exclaimed. William turned to me, his expression stern. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "I won the trip and wanted to give it to my parents. Since Dad can't go, I thought Mom could go with me," I replied calmly, hoping to diffuse the tension. "Why didn't you discuss this with me first?" William asked, confusion and irritation in his tone. "It's my prize, William," I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "What's the big deal? You always travel with Kelly." "It's not the same. Mom and I only take trips within the country. We haven't traveled abroad in years," William countered, his voice rising. "How could you decide this without talking to me?" He slammed his hand on the table, cutting me off. "You're getting too bold for a daughter-in-law. Mom and I are going, and you're staying home." His words made me wince with their childishness. Wait a minute, you've had enough of this trip, I said, trying to keep my composure. If you're not happy about it, maybe we should talk about divorce. I couldn't believe I had just said that over something so trivial. It felt utterly ridiculous, but my anger flared. I won this trip fair and square. I've already decided to give it to my mom. Can't you see the signs? For once, Mom wants to go. When does it end with you always putting Callie first? You never consider how I feel, I exclaimed, frustration bubbling over. I don't care how you feel. This trip is for me and Mom. You stay home and behave, William insisted coldly, his dismissive tone chilling my affection for him. It was clear that I ranked lower than Callie in his priorities, and I couldn't keep dealing with this ridiculous dynamic. Fine, do what you want and enjoy your trip. You should have listened in the first place, I replied calmly, trying to keep my composure. Do what you want, William retorted dismissively, a far cry from the caring person I once knew. Meanwhile, Callie looked smug and victorious, relishing the turn of events. Needing space, I resolved to leave the house while they were away on their trip. The distance would give me time to think and perhaps figure out how to navigate this deepening rift. I decided to let William and Callie go ahead with their vacation plans. The next day, I called the airline to transfer the tickets to William and his mother. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn. The airline representative sounded concerned as they informed me, I'm sorry, but once the participants are confirmed, we can't change them. Is that so? I asked, a wave of disappointment washing over me. Yes, and this ticket requires the actual winner to be one of the travelers. So if it's your husband and mother-in-law, the ticket won't be valid, the operator explained. So if I don't go, the ticket is useless, I clarified, seeking confirmation. Exactly. Please check the documents we sent you. They mentioned this condition, they advised. After reviewing the documents, it became clear that only I, the winner, could use the ticket, and it couldn't be transferred. I decided not to tell William and Callie right away. Instead, I made plans for them to travel at their own expense if they chose to do so. That evening, after returning from work, I casually brought up the Hawaii trip to gauge William's thoughts. So, how about that trip? I started. Did you talk to the airline? Are Mom and I all set to go? He asked eagerly, excitement evident in his voice. I did call them, I said, handing over the winning documents along with the tickets. Here are the documents and the tickets. I only need the tickets, William replied dismissively, waving off the papers. But there might be important details in there, especially since it's an international trip, I suggested, hinting at the necessity of understanding the ticket conditions. I don't think I need to. Mom and I are just excited about the trip. He brushed off my concerns, his focus solely on the upcoming vacation. As William skimmed over the importance of reading the fine print, I felt a mix of frustration and resignation. It was clear that he was overlooking crucial details that could affect the trip's feasibility. I've got it covered. We're efficient, unlike you, he retorted dismissively. Fine, whatever. I'll leave them here just in case, I replied, placing the documents on the table, knowing William might overlook the vital information they contained. As expected, on the day of their trip, after making sure William had left, I packed my bags and headed to my parents' house for a quiet stay. While unpacking, the anticipated call from William came through. As soon as I picked up, he burst out, Hey, what's going on? They're saying the ticket can't be used. That's right. If the winner doesn't go, the ticket is invalid, I explained calmly, trying to keep the conversation neutral. What? Why didn't you tell me this earlier? William demanded, confusion and frustration in his voice. I did tell you, remember? I mentioned it might be a good idea to read the instructions, I reminded him, hoping he'd recall our earlier conversation. You mean it was written in those documents you gave me? William asked, frustration evident in his voice. Exactly. It's your fault for not reading, I replied, maintaining my composure despite his growing agitation. So how are we supposed to get to Hawaii? He asked, his tone becoming more heated. Well, the operator did mention that if the winner doesn't go, you'll have to pay the full price, I said matter-of-factly. William sounded frantic, and I could hear Callie's voice in the background, signaling their shared distress. William, what did Patricia say? Callie demanded. Mommy, if Patricia doesn't go, we have to pay for the trip, William started to explain, his voice tinged with disbelief before handing the phone to Callie. Let me talk to her, she insisted, ready to take over the conversation, presumably to find a way out of their predicament. I can't deal with this anymore, Kelly snapped sharply. I decided to let them sort it out themselves and hung up without another word. It wasn't long before William called back. Hello, I answered, bracing myself for more drama. What is it now? I'm busy, I said coldly, not in the mood for further complications. It's not what you think. I tried to buy the tickets, but the credit card isn't working, he explained, sounding flustered. Huh? I don't know anything about your card, I replied, genuinely puzzled. It's not mine, it's your card, William clarified. Oh, so you're saying you used my card without my permission? I accused, my tone icy. I just need to fix it now, he insisted. When I checked my wallet that morning, my card was missing. I had a hunch and immediately froze it. I realize why you're having issues, I said, understanding dawning on me. I knew you stole it, William retorted angrily. Are you kidding me? I was planning to shop with that card abroad. I shot back, my frustration mounting. You freaking witch, he snapped, his voice harsh and unrepentant about taking the trip or using my card without permission. Fed up with his selfish behavior, I coldly rebuked him. What a jerk. Who are you calling a witch? After mocking others all the time, you should just go to hell. What? Who are you talking to like that? William asked, sounding offended and taken aback. Honestly, calling out for mommy is creepy, I replied, highlighting the oddness of his dependency. This situation had escalated beyond simple travel plans and revealed deeper issues in our relationship. If you love your mom so much, maybe you two should just stay together. I can't handle being married to a mama's boy. There's no point in us staying together, I declared, my voice heavy with exasperation. Hey, calm down. If you keep this up, we'll end up getting a divorce, William threatened, his tone sharp. Fine by me. I was thinking the same thing, I retorted, my mind made up. I'm leaving the house and don't plan to come back. Enjoy your time abroad with your beloved mommy. Hope you both have a great trip, I added sarcastically before hanging up, feeling a mix of anger and relief. Furious, I ended the call and immediately blocked William and his mother on all my devices. Following my dad's advice, I went to a law firm to start the process of ending my marriage. As I reviewed our finances to divide our assets, I discovered our joint account was empty. William had withdrawn money multiple times, coinciding with his trips with his mom. It was clear he had used our savings for their travels and had also swiped my credit card without my permission. I demanded significant compensation, which left him owing money and being pursued by creditors. His once indulgent mother, who had always gotten what she wanted, now found herself in a strained relationship with William. They argued every time they met, a stark contrast to their previous closeness. It was ironic how things turned out, considering how spoiled he used to be. Meanwhile, I decided to stay with my parents for a while. The ordeal had caused them to worry, and I wanted to make it up to them by living with and taking care of them. Being away from the chaos of my marriage made me realize that what truly matters is having a loving, supportive family. Going through this divorce reaffirmed that belief, helping me rediscover what was truly important.
The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my sleep. My heart raced as I sat up, disoriented in the darkness. Ethan's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cold. Where was he? I fumbled for my phone, squinting at the bright screen. 3:17 a.m. This wasn't like him at all. Ethan? I called out, my voice echoing through our silent house. No response. Slipping on my robe, I crept downstairs, following the faint glow from the kitchen. As I approached, I heard hushed voices. Ethan's and a woman's? I peered around the corner, my breath catching in my throat. There was Ethan, hunched over the kitchen island, head in his hands. Across from him stood a woman I hadn't seen in years but would recognize anywhere. Jennifer, his estranged sister. You can't keep doing this, Jen, Ethan was saying, his voice strained. Charlotte and I agreed. Oh, spare me the lecture, big brother, Jennifer snapped. You know I wouldn't be here if I had any other choice. I stepped into the kitchen, unable to contain myself any longer. What's going on here? They both whirled to face me, guilt written all over Ethan's face. Jennifer, on the other hand, looked triumphant. Well, she drawled. If it isn't the lovely Charlotte, did we wake you? Cut the crap, Jennifer, I snapped. What are you doing in my house at 3 in the morning? Ethan stepped between us, hands raised placatingly. Char, I can explain. You'd better, I said, crossing my arms. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me. Jennifer let out a harsh laugh. Oh, he's been lying all right. For months now, sending me money, helping me out, all behind your back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Is that true? I asked Ethan, willing him to deny it. He couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't know how to tell you. After everything that happened last time... Last time? I exploded. Last time she nearly ruined us, Ethan? We agreed to cut her off. You promised me. I know, he said, reaching for me. I jerked away. But she needed help, Char. She's my sister. And I'm your wife, I shouted, tears pricking at my eyes. How could you do this to me? To us? Jennifer smirked, clearly enjoying the drama. Face it, Charlotte. Blood is thicker than water. Ethan will always choose me over you. That's enough, Ethan roared, rounding on his sister. You need to leave now. Fine, Jennifer shrugged, sauntering towards the door. But this isn't over, big brother. You owe me. The door slammed behind her, leaving Ethan and me in a deafening silence. Charlotte, he began, his voice pleading. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. How long? I interrupted, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated. 6 months. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. 6 months of lies, 6 months of sneaking around behind my back, 6 months of choosing her over me. I trusted you, I said, my voice breaking. After everything we've been through, I thought we were past this. We are, Ethan insisted, reaching for me again. This time, I let him take my hands. Charlotte, I love you. You're my wife, my partner. Jennifer, she's just my sister. She needed help, and I couldn't turn my back on her. But you're the one I choose, always. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of our troubles. I need some time, I said, pulling away from him. I can't process this right now. As I turned to leave the kitchen, Ethan called out, Where are you going? I paused in the doorway, not looking back. To pack a bag. I'm staying at Olivia's tonight. Don't try to stop me. With that, I climbed the stairs, my mind reeling. How had my life turned upside down so quickly? And more importantly, how was I going to fix it? I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over Ethan's name. 3 days of silence stretched between us like an abyss. Part of me wanted to hurl the device across Olivia's guest room, but I forced myself to hit call instead. He answered on the first ring. Charlotte? Are you okay? We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Meet me at Rosie's Diner in an hour. The bell above the door chimed as Ethan walked in, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Good. At least I wasn't the only one suffering. Thanks for coming, I said as he slid into the booth across from me. Of course, he replied, fidgeting with a napkin. Char, I'm so sorry. I held up a hand. I didn't ask you here for apologies. I want answers. Why, Ethan? After everything Jennifer's put us through, why would you risk our marriage for her? He sighed, shoulders slumping. She's changed, Charlotte. She's been through some rough times, and she's really trying to turn her life around, I scoffed. And you believe her? After all the lies? I do, he said, meeting my eyes. She's been sober for 8 months. She's holding down a job. And she's been seeing a therapist. That caught me off guard. A therapist? Ethan nodded. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It explains a lot of her past behavior. She's on medication now, and it's making a real difference. I felt my resolve wavering. If Jennifer was genuinely trying to get help, why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice softer now. I wanted to, Ethan said, reaching across the table. This time I let him take my hand. But I was afraid you wouldn't believe her, that you'd think it was just another manipulation. Can you blame me? I asked, pulling my hand away. After what happened last time? Ethan winced. I know, but she's my sister, Char. I couldn't turn my back on her when she was finally asking for help. And just then, the waitress appeared with our usual orders. As she set down my coffee, I caught a glimpse of her name tag, Jennifer. My stomach churned. You still should have told me, I said, pushing the mug away. We're supposed to be partners, Ethan. No secrets. You're right, he admitted. I screwed up, but I want to make it right. What can I do? I took a deep breath. I want to meet with Jennifer, see this change for myself. Ethan's eyes widened. Are you sure? I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position. I'm sure, I said, even as doubt gnawed at me. It's the only way I'll know if I can trust either of you again. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll set it up. As we left the diner, Ethan reached for my hand. I let him take it, but the gesture felt hollow. Trust, once broken, was not easily mended. The next evening, I found myself standing outside Jennifer's apartment, my heart pounding. Ethan squeezed my hand reassuringly as he knocked. The door swung open, revealing a woman I barely recognized. Gone was the wild-eyed, disheveled Jennifer of old. This woman looked put together. Calm. "Charlotte," she said, her voice lacking its usual edge. "I'm so glad you came. Please, come in." As we stepped inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into the lion's den, but I had to know the truth. Jennifer gestured to the couch. "Can I get you anything? Water? Tea?" "No, thank you," I said stiffly. "I think we should just talk." She nodded, settling into an armchair across from us. "I owe you an apology, Charlotte. My behavior has been inexcusable, and I'm truly sorry for all the pain I've caused you and Ethan." I studied her face, searching for signs of deception. "Ethan tells me you've been getting help." "Yes," Jennifer said, her eyes dropping to her hands. "I should have done it years ago, but I was too proud, too scared to admit I needed help." As she spoke about her diagnosis, her treatment, I felt my anger slowly giving way to something else. Understanding? Pity? I wasn't sure. But just as I was starting to relax, Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face paling. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, concern etching his features. "Fine," Jennifer said quickly. Too quickly. "It's nothing." But I saw the panic in her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she set the phone down, and in that moment, I knew. She was lying. Again. The annual Thompson family barbecue was in full swing, but I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me since our meeting with Jennifer. Ethan's hand on my lower back felt more like a restraint than comfort as we navigated through clusters of relatives. "Charlotte, dear." Ethan's mother, Margaret, swooped in for a hug. "We've missed you. How are you holding up?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine, Margaret. Just been busy with work." She patted my cheek. "Well, we're all so glad you two worked things out. Family is everything, after all." As if summoned by those words, Jennifer appeared, all smiles and charm. "Charlotte, I'm so happy you could make it." I tensed, remembering the panic in her eyes at her apartment. "Jennifer, how nice to see you." "Oh, come now," she laughed, linking her arm through mine. "Be strangers. We're practically sisters." Before I could protest, she was steering me away from Ethan, towards a group of cousins I barely knew. As we walked, she leaned in close. "I know you don't trust me," she whispered, her breath hot on my ear. "But you should be careful. There are things about you Ethan doesn't know, things I could tell him." I jerked away, heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" Jennifer's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, you know, your little indiscretion last year when you thought Ethan was cheating?" The world tilted sideways. How could she possibly know about that? "I don't know what you're talking about," I managed, but my voice shook. "Don't you?" Jennifer's eyes glittered. "That handsome client of yours, Robert, was it? I'm sure Ethan would be fascinated to hear all about your late-night meetings." "Nothing happened," I hissed, even as shame burned through me. It was true. Nothing had happened. But I'd been tempted. God help me, I'd been tempted. "Maybe not," Jennifer shrugged. "But how do you think it would look to Ethan, to everyone here?" I glanced around wildly, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on us. Ethan was watching from across the yard, brow furrowed in concern. "What do you want?" I asked, defeat heavy in my chest. Jennifer's smile widened. "Oh, nothing much, just your support. When I tell Ethan I need a place to stay for a while." "Absolutely not," I snapped, finding my backbone. "I won't let you manipulate us anymore." "Then I guess I'll just have to share what I know," Jennifer said, raising her voice. "Hey, everyone, I have an announcement to make." Panic clawed at my throat. "Jennifer, don't," but it was too late. She was already clinking her glass, drawing everyone's attention. "I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be here," Jennifer began, her voice syrupy sweet, "and how thankful I am to Ethan and Charlotte for their support during my recovery." I held my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "In fact," she continued, "I have some exciting news. I'm pregnant." The crowd erupted in cheers and congratulations. I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Ethan pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of shock. "Jen, what? How?" Jennifer's eyes locked on mine, triumph blazing in them. "Oh, it's such a blessing, and I'm so glad I'll have family to help me through it. You'll let me stay with you, won't you, big brother?" The silence that fell was deafening. All eyes turned to Ethan, then to me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This couldn't be happening. Ethan reached for my hand. "Char, I jerked away, bile rising in my throat. "Don't touch me." And then I was running, pushing past concerned relatives, ignoring the calls of my name. I didn't stop until I reached my car, fumbling with the keys as tears blurred my vision. As I peeled out of the driveway, one thought pounded through my head. This was it. The final straw. My marriage was over. The cardboard box felt heavier than it should as I packed the last of my belongings. 2 weeks had passed since the disastrous family barbecue, and I still couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that clung to me like a second skin. "Are you sure about this, Charlotte?" Olivia asked, hovering in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The truth was, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. But I knew I couldn't stay in this house, surrounded by memories of a life that now felt like a lie. As if on cue, Ethan's voice drifted up from downstairs. "Char, can we talk?" I closed my eyes, steeling myself. "I'll be down in a minute," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. Olivia squeezed my arm. "I'll wait in the car. Take your time." I found Ethan in the kitchen, looking lost among the half-packed boxes. The sight of him still made my heart ache, despite everything. "So, this is really happening," he said, gesturing to the chaos around us. "It is," I replied, keeping my distance. "I think we both know it's for the best." Ethan's shoulders slumped. "I never wanted this, Charlotte. I love you. We can still fix this." I shook my head, feeling the familiar sting of tears. "Can we? After everything that's happened, Jennifer's pregnant, Ethan. And you chose her. Again. I didn't choose her over you," he protested. "I'm just trying to help my sister." "At what cost?" I asked, my voice rising. "Our marriage? My trust? When does it end?" Before he could answer, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. "Charlotte!" Ethan was at my side in an instant, his arm around my waist. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I managed through gritted teeth. "It hurts." The world tilted, and suddenly I was on the floor, Ethan's panicked face swimming above me. I heard him calling for Olivia, felt hands lifting me, but it all seemed far away. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed, the steady beep of monitors filling the air. Olivia sat beside me, her face drawn with worry. "What happened?" I croaked, my throat dry. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, honey, you collapsed. The doctors say it was a combination of stress and exhaustion. Your body just shut down." I closed my eyes, letting the information sink in. "Where's Ethan?" "He's outside. He's been here the whole time, pacing like a caged animal." "Do you want me to get him?" Part of me wanted to say no, to shut him out completely. But a larger part, the part that still loved him despite everything, needed to see him. I nodded, and moments later, Ethan was by my side, his eyes red-rimmed and worried. "Char," he breathed, taking my hand. "I was so scared I thought I might lose you." "You can't lose what you've already thrown away," I said, but there was no bite to my words, just exhaustion. Ethan's face crumpled. "I know I've messed up, but seeing you like this, it's made me realize what really matters. You're everything to me, Charlotte. Please, give me one more chance. I'll do whatever it takes." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to. But the memory of Jennifer's smug face, of Ethan's repeated betrayals, held me back. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The stress, the lies, it's killing me. Literally." He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I understand, but I'm not giving up on us, Charlotte. I'll prove to you that you can trust me again, whatever it takes." As he spoke, a nurse entered, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Thompson? We have your test results." I braced myself, expecting the worst, but nothing could have prepared me for her next words. "Congratulations," she said with a smile. "You're pregnant." The world stopped. I looked at Ethan, saw my own shock mirrored in his eyes. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change. Again, I stared at the pregnancy test in my hands, the 2 pink lines mocking me. It had been a week since the hospital, and I still couldn't wrap my head around it. Pregnant, with everything going on, how could this be happening? A knock on the bathroom door startled me. "Charlotte?" Olivia's voice called. "You okay in there?" I opened the door, wordlessly holding out the test. Olivia's eyes widened. "Oh, honey," she breathed, pulling me into a hug. "What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? I pulled away, sinking onto the edge of the bathtub. "I don't know," I admitted. "I mean, Ethan and I were barely speaking, and with Jennifer's pregnancy." Olivia sat beside me, her face serious. "Charlotte, I know things are complicated, but maybe this is a sign, a chance to start fresh," I scoffed. "A fresh start? With all this baggage?" "Listen to me," Olivia said, grabbing my hands. "You love Ethan. Despite everything, I know you do. And he loves you. Maybe it's time to lay all the cards on the table. Really talk things through." I wanted to argue, to list all the reasons why that was a terrible idea. But a small part of me, the part that still clung to hope, whispered that maybe she was right. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll talk to him, but I'm not promising anything." An hour later, I found myself sitting across from Ethan at our favorite coffee shop. The familiar setting felt strange now, like a relic from another life. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, fidgeting with my cup. Ethan nodded, his eyes searching my face. "Of course, Charlotte, I'm pregnant," I blurted out, unable to hold it in any longer. Ethan's jaw dropped. For a moment he just stared at me, shock written all over his face. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his features. "We're having a baby?" he whispered, reaching for my hand. I pulled back, shaking my head. "Ethan, this doesn't change anything. We still have a lot to work through." His smile faltered. "I know. But Charlotte, this is incredible news. We're going to be parents." "So is Jennifer," I reminded him, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Ethan's face fell. "About that, there's something you should know." My heart clenched. "What now?" He took a deep breath. "Jennifer, she's not really pregnant. It was all a lie, to manipulate us. I found out yesterday." The world tilted on its axis. "What?" I gasped. Why would she do that?" "She's sick, Charlotte," Ethan said, his voice heavy with regret. "She's off her meds, has been for months. I've arranged for her to get help, real help this time, in a facility where she can't hurt anyone else." I sat back, stunned. All this time, all the pain and betrayal, for a lie? "I'm so sorry," Ethan continued, his eyes pleading. "I should have seen through her act. I should have trusted you. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd fallen in love with, the man I'd built a life with. He'd made mistakes, huge ones. But hadn't I too? "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think I want to try." Relief washed over Ethan's face. He reached for my hand again, and this time I let him take it. "We have a lot to work on," I warned. "Trust to rebuild. It won't be easy." "I know," he nodded. "But you and our baby, you're worth fighting for. I'll do whatever it takes, Charlotte, I promise." As I sat there, Ethan's hand warm in mine, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other, for ourselves and for the little life growing inside me. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's go home." And with that decision, I took the first step on a new, uncertain path. One that I hoped would lead us back to the love we once shared, stronger and wiser than before. The soft glow of candlelight flickered across Ethan's face as we finished our dinner. 3 months had passed since our reconciliation, and tonight marked a milestone, our first home-cooked meal together since I'd moved back in. "This is nice," I said, reaching for his hand across the table. Ethan smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "It is. How are you feeling? Any morning sickness today?" I shook my head, unconsciously resting a hand on my slightly swollen belly. "Not today, but Ethan, is everything okay? You seem distracted." He hesitated, then sighed. "I'm sorry, Char. Work's been crazy lately. There's this big project, and The shrill ring of his phone cut him off. Ethan glanced at the screen, his face tightening. "I have to take this," he said, standing abruptly. "I'll be right back." As he hurried from the room, a familiar unease settled in my stomach. I'd seen this behavior before, when he was hiding Jennifer's involvement in our lives. Against my better judgment, I followed him, pausing outside his study door. "I told you not to call me at home," Ethan was saying, his voice low and urgent. "No, I can't meet you tonight. Charlotte's suspicious enough as it is." My heart pounded. Who was he talking to? What was he hiding now? "Look, I'll figure something out," Ethan continued. Just give me a few more days. I promise I'll make it right." I stumbled back, my mind reeling. After everything we'd been through, after all his promises, was he lying to me again? When Ethan returned to the dining room, I was waiting, arms crossed. Who was that? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. He blinked, caught off guard. Oh, just work stuff. Nothing important. Don't lie to me, Ethan, I snapped, my composure cracking. I heard you. Who can't you meet tonight? What are you trying to make right? Ethan's face paled. Charlotte, I can explain. Then explain, I shouted, tears burning my eyes, because from where I'm standing it looks like you're betraying me all over again. He reached for me, but I jerked away. It's not what you think, he pleaded. I swear I'm not cheating on you. Then what is it? I demanded. Because I can't do this again, Ethan. I won't. He ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling. It's Jennifer. The world tilted sideways. Jennifer? I thought she was in a facility. Getting help. She was, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. But she checked herself out last week. She's been calling me, begging for money. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. And you've been giving it to her? After everything? I didn't want to stress you out, he said, about reaching for me again. With the baby and us trying to rebuild, I thought I could handle it on my own. I stepped back, shaking my head. You promised me, Ethan. No more secrets, no more lies. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me? I laughed bitterly. How's that working out? Before he could respond, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. Charlotte! Ethan cried, rushing to my side. What's wrong? I don't know, I panted, fear clawing at my throat. Something's not right. As Ethan helped me to the couch, another wave of pain hit. I looked down in horror to see a small spot of blood on my pants. Oh God, I whispered, meeting Ethan's panicked gaze, the baby. In that moment, everything else fell away. The lies, the betrayal, even Jennifer. None of it mattered. All I could think about was the precious life inside me and the terrifying possibility that I might lose it. As Ethan called for an ambulance, I closed my eyes, silently praying. Please, let our baby be okay. Please, don't let this be the price of our mistakes. But as another cramp seized me, I couldn't shake the feeling that our fragile attempt at reconciliation was crumbling around us, taking our dreams of a family with it. The sterile hospital walls seemed to close in on me as I waited for news about my baby. The last few hours had been a blur of pain, fear, and frantic medical activity. Now, in the eerie quiet of the recovery room, I was left alone with my thoughts and the steady beep of monitors. Ethan burst through the door, his face etched with worry. Charlotte, I'm so sorry. I got here as fast as I could. How are you? The baby? I turned away, unable to look at him. The baby's fine, I said, my voice hollow. Just a scare. The doctor says I need to rest and avoid stress. Ethan's relief was palpable. Thank God, he breathed, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. Don't, I said, finally meeting his eyes. I can't do this anymore, Ethan. The lies, the secrets. It's killing me. And now it almost cost us our child. His face crumpled. Charlotte, please, I know I messed up, but I swear I'll make it right. No more secrets. I laughed bitterly. You said that before. How can I ever trust you again? Before he could respond, a commotion in the hallway caught our attention. A familiar voice, shrill and angry, echoed through the corridor. I need to see my brother. You can't keep me out. My blood ran cold. Jennifer, Ethan paled. I'll handle this, he said, moving towards the door. No, I said, struggling to sit up. I want to hear what she has to say. Jennifer burst into the room, her eyes wild. When she saw me, she sneered. Well, if it isn't the happy couple. Jennifer, you need to leave, Ethan said, stepping between us. She ignored him, focusing on me. Did he tell you about the baby? My heart stopped. What are you talking about? Jennifer's laugh was cruel. Oh, this is Rich. He didn't tell you, did he? I'm pregnant, Charlotte. And guess who the father is? The world tilted sideways. I looked at Ethan, silently begging him to deny it, but the guilt in his eyes said everything. No, I whispered, feeling like I might be sick. Tell me it's not true. Ethan reached for me, his voice breaking. Charlotte, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I was drunk, and Jennifer, she took advantage. Took advantage? Jennifer screeched. You came to me, Ethan. You were the one who said you were unhappy that Charlotte didn't understand you. I closed my eyes, willing this nightmare to end. But when I opened them, nothing had changed. My husband, the father of my child, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Get out, I said, my voice deadly calm. Both of you, get out of my sight. Charlotte, please, Ethan begged. Let me explain. "There's nothing to explain," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "You slept with your sister, you got her pregnant, while I was at home, carrying your child, trying to rebuild our marriage." Jennifer smirked, one hand resting on her belly. "Face it, Charlotte. You've lost. Ethan will always choose family over you." Something inside me snapped. With strength I didn't know I possessed, I lunged out of the bed, grabbing Jennifer by the collar. "You are not his family," I hissed. "You're a cancer, destroying everything you touch." Ethan pulled me back, his face a mask of shock. "Charlotte, stop! Think of the baby." His words were like a bucket of ice water. I stumbled back, suddenly aware of the monitors beeping frantically around me. As nurses rushed in, alerted by the commotion, I locked eyes with Ethan one last time. "We're done," I said, my voice breaking. "I want a divorce." The last thing I saw before the sedative took hold was Ethan's devastated face and Jennifer's triumphant smirk. As darkness claimed me, one thought echoed through my mind. How had my life come to this? And more importantly, how was I going to pick up the pieces? 6 months after leaving Ethan, I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. My hand rested on my now prominent baby bump, a bittersweet reminder of the life I was building. Alone, but stronger than ever. The doorbell rang, jolting me from my reverie. Olivia's voice called out, "Charlotte, you ready?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Today was the day I'd face Ethan for the first time since the hospital. The final divorce hearing. As we drove to the courthouse, Olivia squeezed my hand. "You've got this, Char. Remember how far you've come." She was right. In the past months, I'd thrown myself into creating a new life. Our online business was thriving, giving me a sense of purpose and financial independence I'd never known. But more importantly, I'd rediscovered myself. The strong, resilient woman I'd lost somewhere along the way. The courthouse loomed before us, a monument to endings and beginnings. As we climbed the steps, I spotted Ethan waiting by the entrance. My heart clenched, but not with longing, with pity. He looked terrible, his once crisp suit hanging loosely on his frame, dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "Charlotte," he breathed, reaching for me. I stepped back. "Don't," I said, my voice steady. "Let's just get this over with." Inside, as our lawyers finalized the paperwork, Ethan leaned towards me. "I lost my job," he whispered. "The stress. I made some mistakes at work, big ones." I nodded, unsurprised. "And Jennifer?" His face darkened. "Gone. If she lost the baby. If there ever was one." Turns out it was all a lie to manipulate me. A part of me wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly, I just felt sad. "I'm sorry, Ethan, for all of it." He looked at me, eyes brimming with regret. "I ruined everything, didn't I? Us, the life we built. I threw it all away." "We both made mistakes," I said softly. "But yes, you did, and now we both have to live with the consequences." As I signed the final document, a weight lifted from my shoulders. It was done. I was free. Outside the courthouse, Ethan caught my arm. "Charlotte, wait, I know I have no right to ask, but... the baby. Will I ever..." I met his gaze, seeing the broken man before me. In that moment, I made a decision that surprised even me. "You're still this child's father, Ethan," I said. "If you can prove to me that you've changed, really changed, then yes, you can be part of their life. But it has to be on my terms." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "I promise I'll do whatever it takes." As Ethan walked away, Olivia appeared at my side. "You okay?" I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Yeah, I think I am." That night, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I felt a flutter in my belly. My hand flew to the spot, tears springing to my eyes as I felt my baby kick for the first time. In that moment, everything crystallized. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache, it had all led me here. To this moment of pure, unadulterated joy. I thought about the journey ahead, single motherhood, building my business, maybe even finding love again someday. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. Ready to face whatever life threw at me, on my own terms. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky, I made a promise to myself and to my unborn child. We would build a life filled with love, honesty, and strength. A life where we never compromised our happiness for anyone else's mistakes. The future stretched out before me, uncertain but full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, completely free. I placed both hands on my belly, smiling through my tears. "It's just you and me, little one," I whispered. "And we're gonna be just fine." As night fell, I stepped back inside, closing the door on my old life and embracing the new one waiting to begin. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain: I was ready to face them, stronger and more resilient than ever before.
My name is Emily, and at 26, I'm a driven career woman. Currently, I share a home with my husband, John. Lately, I've been contemplating starting a family soon, but John believes we should first focus on building a house and settling down before considering children. Therefore, we're diligently saving money for our future home. Despite my desire to start a family promptly, John remains adamant about his stance. Whenever I broach the topic of children, he reiterates the need to establish our home first. It's disheartening how he disregards my perspective. I resign myself to the idea that I must work harder to contribute to our savings. John and I have been married for a year now, and I've noticed a pattern in our relationship. He rarely considers my opinions, a trait that persisted from our dating days. Initially, I admired his strong convictions, but in marriage, mutual respect for each other's viewpoints is essential. I fear our marriage is faltering, especially with the influence of his parents, who live just a short drive away. John frequently visits his parents, citing reasons like cutting down on expenses. However, I've discovered he indulges in drinks with his coworkers, conveniently omitting these expenses from his frugal calculations. It's perplexing how stringent he is with me about saving, yet lenient with himself. His frugality extends to trivial matters like conserving hot water and turning off lights prematurely, directives he imposes solely on me. If only he extended the same standards to himself, perhaps our relationship wouldn't feel so one-sided. I would be seething with anger. However, he seems to believe it's acceptable to impose his ideas on others. Every week, when we visit his parents' house, a new problem surfaces. Hasn't it been a year since you got married? We want some good news soon. Well, we'll be able to see our grandchild, exclaims both my in-laws, putting immense pressure on me. Glancing at John, sitting beside me, I can tell he's glaring disapprovingly. It's evident he wants to say, "Don't say unnecessary things." While I share the desire for a child, John insists on building our own home first. It's entirely inappropriate for my in-laws to pressure me to have a child in this situation. Rather than advising John, who doesn't listen to my words at all regarding having children, my in-laws persist in pressuring me. Despite wanting to speak up, I'm silenced by their constant pressure for a grandchild. After the meal, John announces, "I'm going out for a smoke." "You know, Emily, it seems like you're working, but if you want to be a housewife, you should quit your job and work hard to be a good wife." Maybe that's why John isn't paying attention to you. It feels as though I'm being told I can't have children because I'm working. Despite my strong desire for children, John is the one not thinking about having them anytime soon. "Just quit your job already," urges my in-law. I retort, "It was John who asked me to work. Why don't you talk to John first before constantly lecturing me?" Expressing my anger, I continue. "When it comes to having children, I want them too. But it's John who stubbornly refuses to listen to me until we have our own home. Instead of nagging at me, why don't you make sure you tell your son the truth?" My words leave my in-laws in a state of shock. I excused myself with a simple apology and left the table, making my way towards the entrance. The anger within me extended to John, who leisurely smoked by the entrance. Without saying a word, I climbed into the car, and he followed suit, casually remarking, "Hey, are you leaving already?" Knowing he would never disclose the truth to his parents, I grew weary of the various things my in-laws constantly told me. I declared that I wouldn't be visiting my in-laws' house anymore, and John widened his eyes in surprise. "Why not? We can save on food expenses, right? You also want a home soon and children, don't you?" he questioned. Fed up with the continuous impositions from both him and my in-laws, I snapped back. "If it's about saving, I've told you many times that we would save more if you stopped going to drinking parties or smoking. Instead of driving to your parents' house just to save the cost of one meal, why don't you save in that way? Everyone needs a break. Expressing my frustration, I continued, "You keep imposing things on me, like not using hot water and turning off the lights by 10 p.m. You think we can save money without sacrificing anything. If I have to go through all this trouble alone, then I don't need a home. I'm fed up with this. You never sacrifice anything yourself, but you're okay with imposing it on others." He seemed to downplay the situation, saying it's not a big deal. But I countered, "No, it is a big deal. How much patience do you think I've had all this time?" Moreover, I was infuriated by his pretense in front of his parents, making it appear as if I were the reason we couldn't have grandchildren. I'm tired of being the only one asked to have grandchildren. It's not me who doesn't want children, it's John. I've been saying it for a long time. I want children soon, so please stop being so angry. Seeing John struggle to deal with my unusual anger brought a slight sense of satisfaction, but it didn't resolve everything. Unsure of what to do next, I gazed out of the car window, ignoring John. A turning point for us came a month later when one of my relatives, my father's brother, passed away. With several pieces of land, a luxurious mansion, and a lavish lifestyle, my uncle's passing became a revelation for John. "Impressive. I didn't know you had such a remarkable relative," he remarked a few days later. Upon receiving news about my uncle's inheritance, I decided to discuss the details with the lawyer in our apartment. Recognizing that it was a matter exclusively related to me and had no bearing on John, I politely asked him to leave the room, especially since he seemed uneasy about the concept of inheritance. I wanted to spare him any potential trouble that could arise if he got involved. After about 3 hours of listening to the lawyer explain the intricacies of the inheritance, I thanked him and asked him to leave. However, to my surprise, John, who had been at home earlier, was nowhere to be found. Assuming he had probably stepped out to avoid interrupting my conversation with the lawyer, I started preparing dinner. Little did I know, 3 months later, John approached me, expressing, "There's something I want to show you," and took me for a drive. Excitement welled up as we entered a residential area, but my confusion grew when the car parked in front of a certain house. John then pressed the intercom, and my in-laws emerged from inside. However, it was evident that this house was not their home. "You finally made it. When are you and Emily moving over here?" "We're thinking of moving in by the end of this month," announced my father-in-law. He continued blaming me for being a selfish daughter-in-law and accused me of always shifting the responsibility for having children onto John. I shot a disapproving glare at John, bewildered as to why he brought me here when I had clearly stated I wouldn't visit my in-laws anymore. Searching for an explanation, I questioned him, and he simply shrugged, stating, "Don't get so angry. If we live together, we can bridge the gap between you and my mom. Besides, this will be our new home from now on, so you should cooperate on the children issue as well. Live together." His revelation left me in disbelief. I hadn't agreed to living with them, especially after explicitly stating that I wouldn't go to my in-laws' house anymore. The situation was further complicated by the nature of the house. As John disclosed, it's a 2-family house. My plan was always for us to live with my parents eventually. "So, what's the problem with living in a 2-family house now?" he asked. The question lingered in the air as I mulled over the situation. Living in a 2-family house seemed to be a significant issue, especially when considering our savings. According to our financial situation, building such a splendid new house was seemingly impossible. I couldn't fathom how John managed it. "My dad and I chipped in the money, so our savings are empty, but it's fine, right?" John casually mentioned. His nonchalant attitude perplexed me. He continued, "I heard your uncle's inheritance was worth $690,000. So, if you use that money to repay us for the cost of the 2-family house, it should be fine, huh?" I was taken aback. The idea that he believed my inheritance should be used to fund the house without my consent baffled me. Even if I were to inherit the money, how I used it should be my decision, not his. Frustrated by my rejection of their proposal, John reached into his bag and pulled out a pre-filled divorce form with his name on it. "Your money is our money. If you don't like living together, let's get a divorce," he declared. I took the divorce form from his hand, expressing, "Fine, if living together is the alternative, then divorce is the better choice." Firmly placing the divorce form into my bag, I turned my back on him and my in-laws, who looked stunned. Ignoring their reactions, I continued, "By the way, I renounced my uncle's inheritance." John froze with a bewildered expression. Without waiting for a response, I took a bus and headed home to our apartment. Upon arrival, I promptly filled in my name on the divorce form, which already had John's name on it. I then submitted the divorce papers and immediately purchased cardboard boxes at a home improvement store to start preparing for the move. Recognizing that I couldn't handle the move alone, I hired a moving company. Fortunately, it turned out that not many moves were happening during this season, allowing for a quick relocation. As I packed for the move, a commotion outside the front door indicated John's return. I had the chain lock on, and I addressed him, "Sorry, I had the chain lock on. I don't know what you might do when you're so angry. Besides, I need to finish packing for the move. Could you stay at your parents' house for a few days?" "I won't accept a divorce," John declared, widening my eyes in surprise. I reminded him, "But you handed me the divorce form, didn't you? If you sign the divorce papers, that means you agree to the divorce, you know." Astonished, I questioned whether he truly understood the implications of what he had done. He frowned, appearing frustrated, but quickly changed the subject. "Why would you give up on a $690,000 inheritance? Normally, you'd inherit it," he questioned. It seemed he had overheard some details about the inheritance but hadn't grasped the full story. Likely, after learning about the $690,000 inheritance, he had rushed to my in-laws, and they impulsively purchased the two-family house without considering the consequences. I explained, "The inheritance discussion came to me because there wasn't anyone else to inherit it. My uncle had 3 sons, 2 daughters, a wife, and grandchildren. However, all of them renounced the inheritance, so it ended up coming to me. My uncle did have $690,000, but he had to demolish his mansion, spend a lot on maintaining his land, and had plenty of debt. I realized that renouncing the inheritance was a better choice than inheriting it." John was in disbelief, exclaiming, "No way. So even if you had inherited $690,000, you're saying there wouldn't have been much money left? That's fraud." I explained that the lawyer and I had a proper discussion about it, but someone had eavesdropped and left before hearing the whole story. My words left him speechless, and perhaps he finally realized he was in the wrong. However, I asserted, "It's too late now. You betrayed my trust. We've already filed for a divorce, and you and I are no longer a couple. Why are you suddenly saying you don't want a divorce now? If you truly didn't want a divorce, you should have followed me right away when I returned, shouldn't you?" I reminded him of the consequences of his actions, emphasizing that his mother's opinion about the divorce didn't change the fact that he and his father had invested in the two-family house. His mother's lack of experience with work didn't allow her to fully appreciate the value of money. I sighed, realizing it wasn't my role to listen to his complaints about his parents. If we were still a married couple, I might have entertained the conversation. However, I reminded him, "You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you?" He pleaded, "If you do it now, we can still be a couple. Please, let's live together in that two-family house." "I've already submitted the divorce papers, so it's pointless now," I replied. His expression slumped in front of the apartment door, appearing bewildered and lost. While I believed he brought this upon himself, I couldn't let him linger outside forever. Briefly considering sending him away, I realized I had no time to waste, so I continued with my preparations for the move. After a while, he was gone, and I proceeded with the move, informing my workplace about the divorce, especially since my boss had acted as our mediator. Feeling obligated to apologize for the divorce, I also shared the news with my coworkers who had been invited to our wedding during lunch break. Unexpectedly, he burst into my department in front of my coworkers, claiming, "It's absurd that you're talking about the divorce. I wish you hadn't mentioned it." He disclosed the situation in his department, assuming I had inherited an estate and suggested buying a two-family house. When faced with the choice between divorce or living together, I chose divorce. Consequently, he found himself being avoided by everyone. I even received sympathy from colleagues. Eventually, he quit his job. During this time, a male colleague confessed to me, saying, "I've actually liked you for a long time. I hope to build a home where we can communicate as a couple and work things out together." "Get out because I'm moving in with my family," Jeff pointed at us, loudly declaring while my in-laws were giving instructions to the movers. His face twisted maliciously, and I couldn't help but show my disgust. However, Stacy, next to me, reacted differently, asking Jeff with confusion, "Dad, you didn't know?" Hearing this, Jeff was visibly puzzled. Stacy seemed so flustered that not only Jeff, but also his mother and father stopped what they were doing and looked over at us. Nicole continued to give instructions to the movers, seemingly uninterested in the situation. Despite my dismay at the behavior of Jeff's family, I was determined to reveal a certain truth. My name is Dean Anderson, a 46-year-old remote worker. I have a husband and a daughter leading a typical life. After several dates, Jeff proposed to me 3 years into our relationship. Having a frequently ill mother, I wanted to marry as soon as possible to give her peace of mind, so I accepted Jeff's proposal. Sometime after our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Jeff was truly happy, eagerly looking forward to seeing our child. When our daughter Stacy was born, Jeff took an active role in parenting, and I lived happily. However, I had some worries. The biggest concern was about my mother. Her health improved upon seeing her grandchild, despite being almost better than before, and she visited us often. Initially, she visited frequently, but as Stacy entered middle school, my mother's health visibly declined. I quit my job to be available for my mother, choosing remote work. This decision allowed me to fully take care of my mother's hospital admissions and discharges. By the time Stacy graduated middle school, my mother was very happy when we visited her. I hoped she would gradually recover and be able to go out as before. However, around this time, Jeff's behavior began to change. Initially, he was willing to help with my mother's care, but lately he had become grumpy, complaining that I wasn't paying attention to him. "Going to your mother's again? You don't care for me when I'm tired from work, but you always look after your sick mother." He would say such incomprehensible things, and even when Stacy and I tried to appease him, he strongly rejected our efforts. Worried about both my mother and Jeff, Stacy took over caring for Jeff. "Mom, leave Dad to me. You should go to Grandma sooner," Stacy said with a smile, and I always relied on her. One day, while living this way, I received a call from my sister-in-law, Nicole. "You've been neglecting my brother lately," she accused out of the blue, making me stare at my phone screen in surprise. I pondered if there was a mix-up, but Nicole's name was clearly displayed on my phone screen. Confused by the baseless accusation, I could only deny it. "It's been a while, Nicole. What's going on all of a sudden?" "I haven't been neglecting Jeff," I said, clueless as to why Nicole would say such a thing. "Don't play dumb. I've heard it from my brother lately. You've been neglecting the house to care only for your own mother. Can you still proudly call yourself a wife?" Nicole accused, and I was baffled. I had been focusing more on my ill mother lately, but I never thought Jeff would tell Nicole about it. However, I wasn't neglecting our home. Stacy helps with the household chores when she gets back from school, and I manage both my work and my mother's care along with the housework. Lately, I did feel like Jeff's complaints had increased, but they were about trivial things like wanting to eat at expensive restaurants or not liking the smell of the laundry detergent, things we couldn't do much about. I was not neglecting the household chores. Just as I was about to explain in detail, Nicole said something shocking. Unfortunately, this has reached our parents too. Someday, our angry mother might come to scold you. Leaving me with those irrational words, Nicole hung up. Immediately surprised by the unexpected turn of events, I was speechless until Stacy spoke to me. "Mom, I'm home. What happened? You look stunned." Regaining my composure, I told Stacy, who had just returned from school, about the conversation. Stacy, too, was shocked and incredulous. Sighing in disbelief, she said, "Hey, Mom, there's something I've been thinking about for a while. Can I talk to you about it?" Nervously, I nodded to Stacy's serious request. Listening to Stacy's concerns made me feel truly disheartened. During a period filled with Jeff's nonsensical complaints and Nicole's harassing calls, my in-laws finally took action. One day after visiting my mother, I came home to find my mother-in-law cooking in the kitchen. Entering the living room, I was so surprised that I dropped my things and just stood there staring at her. Noticing me, my mother-in-law frowned and approached. "Oh, you're back. How's your mother?" "Well, have a seat." Feeling her irritation, I had no choice but to follow her past me to our living room sofa, where I received a lengthy lecture. Initially, she scolded me for my attitude towards Jeff and berated me for neglecting my household duties and making my husband do chores. However, I noticed some inconsistencies in her lecture and corrected her. "Mother, there are some misunderstandings. I have never made Jeff do the household chores. In fact, Jeff hardly helps at all. Embarrassingly, it's Stacy who helps me out." Hearing this, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up, pointed at me, and started shouting. "Do you think that lie will work on me? Are you saying that child is lying to me? What a terrible daughter-in-law. That's enough." With her face red with anger, she stormed out, leaving the stove on and everything behind like a tempest. I hurried to turn off the stove, so I couldn't chase after my mother-in-law. That day, Jeff was in a strangely good mood, almost unnervingly generous. He kept cutting me off every time I tried to explain. I attempted to initiate a conversation, and Stacy also appeared perplexed by the situation. We decided to remain silent and observe, not wanting to upset Jeff. For a few days, Jeff continued to be in a good mood without any issues. Thanks to that, I could take care of my mother without feeling uneasy. However, a few days later, my mother quietly passed away. Despite being engulfed in sadness, Stacy and I managed to get through the funeral and then spent some time sorting through my mother's belongings at her house. I had hoped for Jeff's assistance, but bringing it up made him sullen for the first time in a while. So Stacy and I proceeded with the task, and naturally, the house was filled with memories of my mother, making it difficult to make much progress. As each item reminded us of her, I reluctantly contacted Jeff, and despite his initial good mood, he suggested we stay the night at my mother's house. However, with Stacy's school and my work, it wasn't that simple. For the time being, I told him we would return home the next day and decided to rest for the night. The following day, after making some progress with the sorting, we decided to go back to our house. As we approached our home, I noticed a large truck parked in front of it. Wondering what it was, I realized it was a moving truck with Jeff and my mother-in-law directing the unloading. Confused, I ran up with Stacy to stop them. Jeff stepped forward, puffing out his chest as he noticed us. "You're back already. It's too late for you to return now. I'm moving in with my family, so you two need to leave," he declared loudly with a malicious twist to his face. I couldn't help but show my disgust, but Stacy, standing next to me, asked Jeff with confusion, "Dad, you didn't know?" Jeff was visibly puzzled, and Stacy's words caught the attention of not only Jeff, but also his mother and father. Despite my dismay at the behavior of Jeff's family, I was determined to reveal a certain truth. "Forgotten, this house is mine," I asserted confidently. The in-laws were shocked, and Jeff began to panic, turning pale. Even Nicole, who had been giving instructions to the movers, stopped and confronted me. "What are you talking about? There's no way you could afford to build such a fine house." Now it was my turn to respond with confidence. Thank you for the compliment. This house was built by my father, and originally it's my family home. That can't be true. This house is so beautiful. It looks almost brand new, Nicole exclaimed. Does it look that way? Thank you, Mother. My mom renovated it for us as a wedding gift. Jeff should know about this, I said, attempting to clear up the confusion. It could have easily slipped his mind. But this house is naturally in my name, and the renovation costs were covered by my mother. She moved out happily to an apartment so that we could live here contentedly for a long time. Jeff and I went to express our gratitude to my mother and even discuss the possibility of living together. However, Jeff, who tends to forget things that don't suit him, appeared to realize that his plan had failed. Just as I was about to speak, Stacy began to share information she learned from the inheritance process. Grandma left a lot of assets for me and Mom. But it's not money. It's things like land and apartments that can't easily be converted into cash. Upon hearing this, Jeff turned to his parents with shining eyes, and Nicole raised her hand in joy. Wait a minute. I had no idea your mother had so much wealth. You never said anything about this when we got married. Jeff's outburst led his family to start complaining selfishly. What's that? Isn't that like marriage fraud? That's terrible. You intentionally kept quiet because you didn't intend to give Jeff any of the property. What a greedy woman. From the conversation earlier, it sounded like only you two would inherit everything. My father-in-law, who noticed the most crucial part, looked at us, and I nodded clearly while explaining the situation. Yes, the inheritance is divided between Stacy and me only. Jeff gets nothing. We found the will while sorting through the belongings yesterday. Hearing this, Jeff's family turned red with anger, especially his mother, who was the most furious. This can't be allowed. We'll get a divorce, and then I'll make sure to get compensation from you. As his mother screamed in anger and frustration, I accepted her reaction without hesitation. Yes, I agreed to the divorce. The moment I agreed, his mother turned around and ran off, presumably to the city office, which is probably close by, to get a divorce form. Deliberately not stopping her angry departure, I watched her leave. As I watched his mother head to the office, Jeff grumpily asked me, "Hey, what are you planning to do now? Are you talking about the divorce or where you will live?" Jeff almost snapped at me, but I looked up at the house indifferently. "This house is actually already on the market," I said, surprising Jeff. Confused by my words, Jeff looked puzzled, exchanged looks with his father, and then looked back at me. He didn't seem to understand what I meant, which was to be expected. While spending another night at my mother's house, there was no way Jeff and his family could have imagined that I was selling this house. Facing the puzzled expressions of Jeff and his family, I once again spoke up with confidence. "I've always felt it every time you treated me terribly." I found myself questioning why I had chosen to marry Jeff. I had endured it for Stacy's sake, but even Stacy reached a breaking point, expressing that she couldn't tolerate it anymore. Confronted with this shocking truth, Jeff's face turned pale, and he looked at Stacy. In response, Stacy met Jeff's gaze firmly and voiced her thoughts. "Dad, you always said it was sad to be ignored as the head of the house or to be belittled after coming home tired from work. But don't you think there's a reason you're treated that way? Why don't you realize that you're neglecting and belittling us?" Stacy's pointed words left Jeff speechless. As I thought that he might just silently sign the divorce papers and sulk away, Nicole blurted out something shocking. "If I knew it would come to this, I wouldn't have bothered with the renovation." Everyone present was taken aback by this sudden confession. Looking at Nicole all at once, I was surprised. Not only were Jeff and my father-in-law unaware of Nicole's actions, but her statement itself was unexpected. "Why would you do something like that without permission?" yelled my father-in-law, to which Nicole started making excuses without much concern. "I wanted to live in my ideal room, okay, so I thought, why not take over this house and renovate it while we're at it? But you're selling the house, right?" "Oh, but if you're selling it, why not renovate it and sell it for more?" Nicole's nonchalant and cheery demeanor as she said this made Stacy and me sigh. Not only were we dismayed, but Jeff and my father-in-law felt the same, with Jeff clenching his fists in suppressed anger. Finally, unable to tolerate Nicole's recklessness, Jeff began to yell, "Excess! Even if it's going to be sold or become ours, you should have told us first. We were preparing to move. Where were we supposed to live during the renovation?" Though his preamble was a bit off, his point was valid, leaving Nicole surprised. "Oh, really?" As Nicole responded, Jeff was about to yell again when we saw my mother-in-law running towards us from a distance. It seemed she had brought the divorce papers. "I got it. The divorce papers. Now sign it right here." Despite being out of breath and excited, my mother-in-law, who was handing me the divorce papers, was unaware of the commotion that had just occurred. But that didn't matter to me. I took the divorce papers from her and handed them to Jeff. "You write it. After all the times you've belittled me, you agreed to our divorce, right?" "No way." Jeff immediately refused, possibly because he knew about my mother's inheritance. However, I couldn't tolerate Jeff's behavior and his family's strange antics any longer. So I provoked him, aiming to get him to write the divorce papers. "Changing your tune so suddenly? Seems like you've been in a good mood lately, probably thinking about taking over my house, right? Too bad. Even without my mother's inheritance, I had no intention of handing over this house. It's already planned to be sold. Either way, you'll end up homeless." At my words, Jeff looked bitterly at the divorce papers, trying to control his anger and calm himself. I knew too well the points that would set Jeff off. "It might be a disgrace to you, but if you sign this divorce paper, I might feel a bit relieved." I figured that by demanding from a position of superiority, Jeff would easily be swayed to do as I wished. Given his condescending view of me, this statement was born from such thoughts, but indeed, it contained many of my true feelings. As expected, Jeff's face turned red with anger, and he snatched the divorce papers from my hand, starting to write immediately. "If you insist so much, I'll give you your divorce." I felt a sense of relief at Jeff's hasty action. I had worried that he might reconsider and calm down, but Jeff was simple after all. After receiving the half-completed divorce papers, I filled in my part to prevent any further unexpected events and completed it. I then entrusted the finished divorce papers to Stacy and turned back to Jeff's family. "All that's left is to submit this to the city office, so take all the stuff you brought in with you." Wait a minute. Are you serious? You said you feel relieved if Jeff signed the divorce papers. That's correct, but I never said I'd agree to the move. What about the renovation? Renovation? Unaware of the renovation discussed in her absence, my mother-in-law standing next to my father-in-law grabbed Nicole. After receiving an explanation, a big argument started, and while my father-in-law and Jeff tried to intervene, I attempted to leave with Stacy. However, Jeff and Nicole, determined not to let us escape, grabbed at us. But the movers, who had been watching the situation with dismay, stepped in to mediate. Amid the chaos, we heard the sound of police sirens. Protected by the movers, I looked around and noticed neighbors gathered, drawn by the noise. Seeing a police car approaching with its red lights flashing, someone from the neighborhood must have called them, and we felt relieved. But that relief was short-lived, as Jeff's entire family seemed about to attack us. Just in time, the police intervened, and we were safe. Despite being stopped by the police, Jeff's family's commotion didn't cease, and another officer had to escort us into a police car to calm the situation. Nicole, mistaking our being escorted for an arrest, attempted to throw belongings into the house and was naturally stopped by the police. With additional support arriving to finally quell the disturbance, as Jeff's family began to calm down, the police asked us to accompany them for questioning, leading to further troubles when either Jeff, Nicole, or both acted against the officers. They were arrested for obstructing official duties and taken away in police cars that had arrived for backup. Jeff's parents were also scolded by the police and taken to the station for questioning. From the police car, we observed the entire ordeal, providing a brief statement. Eventually, Jeff and I officially divorced. The process, initially resisted by Jeff even after signing the papers, was prolonged. However, thanks to a mediator, we were able to finalize it smoothly. Soon after, my house found a buyer, securing the money from the sale. Despite Nicole's push for a renovation, the house had already been renovated when my mother passed it down to me, and a buyer quickly appeared. Afterward, my in-laws were not prosecuted, but they couldn't return to the house I inherited, having sold their own house in anticipation of moving into mine. This left them without a place to live, and due to the commotion, they became outcasts in the community, struggling to find a place to belong. My claim for compensation further cornered Jeff's family. The incident became well known at Jeff's workplace, leading to a pay cut followed by his voluntary resignation. Now, he is working day jobs to make compensation payments to me and, for a short while, child support for Stacy. Balancing income and expenses is difficult, and he seems to be juggling multiple jobs to keep up with the payments. As for Nicole, after the dust settled from the incident, she continued working as a beauty consultant as if nothing had happened. However, rumors reached her customers, and eventually, upper management learned of the incident, leading to her dismissal. Despite once living a flashy lifestyle, her savings quickly dwindled. Like Jeff, she is now working multiple jobs to make ends meet, including compensation payments to me. Regarding my in-laws, there was some trouble after the incident, leading to their divorce. Now they are living separately. The mother-in-law, ostracized by the neighbors, was fired from her part-time job. The father-in-law, who planned to enjoy his retirement with his pension, had to allocate most of it to compensation payments to me and is now looking for work despite his age. They are each in a difficult situation, but this is their reparation to us, and I hope they take this time to reflect. On the other hand, Stacy and I have moved to a new house. Even if Jeff's family tries to approach Stacy's school, it's not an issue since she has already transferred. Continuing my work from home and thinking about spending peaceful days ahead with Stacy naturally brings a smile to my face. Feeling liberated from our past troubles, I plan to live happily with Stacy, just the two of us. What's this? Seriously, it's no wonder I couldn't help but exclaim. There, in front of me, were the words of a termination notice. I had been told not to contact during business trips, but this was something I couldn't ignore. I hurriedly called Jack. No answer. I called over and over. Simultaneously, I sent messages, but there was no response. It was past noon. Maybe he couldn't answer due to work, but I had to get in touch somehow. After persistently calling, he finally picked up. Hello, Jack. Don't you know not to contact me during work hours? Jack immediately started yelling. I'm sorry, but it's urgent. I've received a certified letter from the company. I told you not to contact me while I'm on a business trip. Jack was not willing to listen. What if your actions ruin the contract? It seemed impossible to get him to listen. All right. I decided to keep silent about the termination notice, as a result of not contacting at all. My name is Sarah Johnson, 30 years old. I work from home as an industrial designer. Simply put, as an industrial designer, I design the shapes of products. I used to be an employee of a major company working from home, but now I've become independent and freelance. Thankfully, my work is going well, and I'm earning a decent income. At 26, I married Jack, whom I met through a friend's introduction. Even after getting married, I continued to work for the company. But when I became pregnant with our 2-year-old son, Kyle, I switched to working from home. Since then, I've been working from home while Jack worked at the office. After maternity and parental leave, I returned to work from home. Although my salary was lower than when I was going to the office, it's easier on my mind and body than commuting and leaving the child in daycare. Our company created a great system. However, Jack seemed unsatisfied with my reduced salary. Shouldn't you go back to work, even if it means putting Kyle in daycare? We've got a mortgage to pay, and with the economy being down, the company's performance isn't looking up either. Well, that's true. But if we put Kyle in daycare, we have to pay for that too. I think it would end up costing about the same. When we got married, Jack and I took out a joint mortgage to buy our new home. Renting is like throwing money away. It's better to stretch a bit and buy a place. It'll be easier in the long run. Jack, who works at a securities company and is fussy about finance and assets, would argue. Convinced by his point, I agreed, and we bought the apartment, located near a convenient station for commuting. It was a bit pricey, but we were told it would appreciate in value. Life was peaceful until I started working from home. But then Jack began to show his discontent. It seemed it wasn't so much about the money, but rather he felt it was unfair that I was the only one staying at home. If the costs are going to be the same, you might as well go back to work. Staying home all the time leads to a lack of exercise and isolation from society. Sure, there's some truth to that, but with my first childbirth and now childcare, it's easier on my body to stay home. Getting help is difficult, as both Jack and I are from out of town, and our families live far away. We can't easily rely on either side for assistance. When I brought up this topic, I could sense Jack's real feelings from his muttered response. It's unfair that only Sarah gets to stay home. I wish I could too, but there's a difference in our jobs. I'm a designer and Jack is in sales. I can finish designs on my computer and just send the data, but Jack's work can't be done from home. That's true, but still, it feels unfair that only Sarah gets to enjoy this nice house, he complained. Hearing these words surprised me. What do you mean enjoy alone? This is our home. Yours, mine, and Kyle's. First of all, we're both paying the mortgage. The rights should be split equally. Jack's childish remarks made me worry if he was really okay. Even as a father, Kyle was growing up well, and I was managing both childcare and work from home. I also took the bold step of becoming independent as my work was well received, and I started getting offers from business contacts. However, around that time, Jack began coming home late and working more on weekends. It's a tough economy. I've got to work harder, or my sales allowance will keep shrinking, he'd say with a sarcastic sigh. Lucky are those who can work comfortably at home. No need to endure crowded trains to commute, huh? Must be nice, he'd say, implying I was lounging at home while he worked hard. But that's not the case. I'm taking care of the child and household chores while working from home. I'd often have to go out for work and other necessities. I'm certainly not just lounging around at home. Fed up, I once confronted him. Look, I'm not just playing around. Why can't you understand that? I'm paying my share of the mortgage too. Oh, is that so? Jack interrupted, his face turning red with anger. I must be such a failure, huh? Can't even get a mortgage on my own with my meager salary. I never said anything like that. Unlike the talented designer that you are, I have to desperately plead with unpleasant clients every day just to get paid. It always felt like that. No matter what I said, Jack would only take things negatively. I got so tired and eventually stopped talking to him altogether. It seemed pointless to say anything, and gradually, I started to wonder if there was any point in living together. But Jack was Kyle's father. The thought of taking away his father seemed selfish, and that held me back. Maybe because I stopped talking, Jack started behaving even more selfishly, and eventually almost stopped contributing financially. It was supposed to be a joint mortgage, but now it looks like I'm paying it all by myself. It's tough, but with my current income as a designer, I can manage the mortgage and living expenses on my own. Jack probably knows this, and that's why he's behaving like that. I think if we were at risk of losing the house because we couldn't pay the mortgage, he'd contribute something. Jack is that kind of calculative person. And around that time, I started to have a suspicion. Maybe Jack had another woman and was spending his money on her. If that's the case, I have no choice but to take a drastic step. Of course, I'd make sure he pays what he owes. I wanted to find proof, but I didn't know how. The most reliable way would be to hire a detective agency, but that's expensive. If I knew the dates, times, or places to look, it would be easier. But with just a vague suspicion, I had no idea how much it would cost. Right now, I'm managing, but if Jack and I were to separate, there'd be future uncertainties. I prefer to save as much money as possible. Then one day, while I was feeling uneasy, a certified mail from the company arrived. Jack was on a business trip and had been gone for 2 nights and 3 days. Why would they send something like this on a day he's away? I was even more perplexed but curious, so I decided to open it, telling myself that if it was urgent, I needed to contact him immediately. I opened the envelope. "What the heck is this?" I couldn't help but exclaim. It was a termination notice. I was told not to contact Jack during business trips, but I couldn't just ignore this. I tried calling him, no answer. I called again and again. I sent messages too, but got no response. It was past noon. Maybe he couldn't answer because of work, but I had to get through to him. When I kept calling persistently, he finally answered. "Hello, Jack. I told you not to contact me when I'm working." Jack yelled as soon as he answered. "I'm sorry, but it's urgent. You see, there's this certified mail from the company. Don't contact me when I'm on a business trip." Jack wouldn't listen at all. "What if you ruin a contract because of this?" As he said that, I heard someone's voice in the background. Could it be? I quickly pressed the record button. "Listen, I'll say it again. Don't contact me. Got it?" He wouldn't listen, no matter how important it was. Okay. I decided to keep quiet about the termination notice. I ended the call. Jack was the one who didn't listen, even though it was important, and I realized that even if Jack lost his job, it wouldn't affect me much. I'm a designer with a technical skill set steadily building my career. When I started working from home, I was an employee. As an employee, I had to report daily to the company how many hours I worked and such. I needed to inform them even when I took a day off. But now, I'm independent, handling work not just from my former company, but also from other clients. I'm completely freelance. Since becoming freelance, I've been taking on a lot more work and earning several times more than when I was an employee. I could leave Jack and be just fine, but still, it would be a shame to end it like this. That call, I think the voice was a woman's. Listening carefully to the recording, I could make out what was being said. The woman didn't realize I was on the phone and was asking Jack for something. I couldn't hear exactly what it was, but she was asking for something for her birthday. Her birthday must be coming up soon. This could be a clue to finding out who Jack's with. If I can narrow down the hints a bit more, I'll consider hiring a detective. For now, I just have to be patient. The next night, Jack returned from his business trip. "You know I told you not to contact me during work, right? Because of you, I almost lost a contract." "I'm sorry." I wondered who he was in the middle of making a contract with. Perhaps it was a birthday purchase agreement. I smiled to myself, not showing it on my face. "If you understand, then it's fine. I'm going to take a bath and go to bed, okay?" I quietly watched as Jack prepared for his bath in bed. Once he was sound asleep, I stealthily checked his smartphone. As expected, it was locked. I gently took the phone, used Jack's sleeping finger to unlock it, and began to search. There they were, photos of Jack cozied up with the same woman. Not just pictures, but videos too. Some of them incriminating messages, dates, places, how they spent their time together. Everything was there. He probably thought I'd never find out about his affair. How he underestimated me. I copied the data from his phone to my computer, carefully putting the phone back. I started to plan my next move. I'll make sure he experiences hell first. To uncover the identity of the woman, I couldn't tell who she was just from the photos and chats. I reviewed the data and decided to start from there. The next day, Jack left the house as if nothing had happened. He said he was going to work, but I hoped he could still do his job as usual. After sending him off, I revisited the certified mail. It lacked detailed explanations. I didn't know what he did. but it seemed his termination was final. It was a bit troubling. If Jack lost his job, it'd be harder to make him pay alimony and child support. You can't shake down a turnip. He probably spent what he didn't bring home on that woman. I wanted to recoup at least some of it. Of course, I planned to make her pay damages too. I scrutinized the data transferred to my computer. It was unpleasant to see their intimate exchanges, but I was sure to find some clue. Social media platforms typically require a phone number for user registration. When I checked, there it was, a contact listed as Kate, trading in Jack's phone. Apparently, his mistress. Whether Kate was her real name, I wasn't sure. I picked out the necessary information and compiled the data. Now, what to do with this data? Should I hire a detective or go straight to a lawyer? Thinking it over, I had a great idea, something I saw in a melodramatic TV show. I decided to play it out myself. Hey, I think I need to go back to my parents' place for a bit. Why? It's nothing serious, but my mom's caught a bad cold, and my dad can't manage everything alone. Jack glanced at me, pretending to think it over. Probably thought it looked better not to agree too quickly. How many days are you planning to be there? At least 2 or 3 days, I replied, looking up at him as if seeking approval. Jack looked down at me, seemingly pleased with my meek behavior, and his face softened into a smile. That's being a good daughter. Go ahead. Thank you. My demeanor seemed to satisfy him. So when are you leaving? I wanted to leave today, but it's too late now, so I'll leave first thing tomorrow morning, right after you go to work. Okay, got it. Take care. Jack was unnaturally kind, probably playing into my plan. The next morning, as usual, he left the house. Despite being told he's fired, I wondered where he was going, but I needed him out to prepare, so please go ahead. I sent him off with a regretful look and got to work. I left Kyle with a trustworthy babysitter, someone who had taken care of him several times before for work and errands. I could rely on them without worry. Then I messaged Jack. I'm on the train now. Really sorry for the trouble. Planning to be back in 3 days. He replied quickly. Understood. Take care. That night, as expected, Jack brought Kate home. I hired professionals to gather all the evidence of their rendezvous. I knew the data already on Jack's smartphone would be enough for a favorable divorce, but I wanted to personally punish them both. On the first day of the trap, Jack and Kate returned home in the afternoon and didn't leave until the next evening. Then came the main event. I was a bit anxious waiting, not knowing what time they'd return, but I was sure they would. Late that night, just before the date changed, they came back. They seemed tipsy, giggling, and stumbling into the bedroom, falling on the bed tangled together. Now, welcome home. As I finished speaking, I flung open the closet door with a loud bang. Kate screamed in shock and tumbled out of the bed. In the process, she hit her head against the cabinet beside the bed. Serves her right. What? Jack hadn't fallen off the bed, but he was frozen in a bizarre position on it. He was lying on his back, arms thrust forward from his chest. It seemed he was so startled by my appearance that he accidentally pushed Kate away. That's why she flew off the bed and hit her head. Welcome home, dear. Jack lay there in his strange pose, eyes wide open, staring at me. He looked utterly ridiculous. Oh, we have a guest, I remarked as I slowly emerged from the closet and stood beside the bed, looking down at Jack with a full smile. I ignored the woman who had lost consciousness. You. Who is this lady? It's quite rude to sleep in someone else's house like this. Jack was at a loss for words. Well, that's okay. Let's have a little chat, I said, pulling out my phone to make a call. Who are you calling? Oh, just someone, I replied, humming a tune as I ended the call and coldly looked down at Kate. What should we do with her? What do you mean? What should we, wake her up or let her sleep? Jack glanced back and forth between me and Kate, falling silent in apparent confusion. All right then, we don't want anything to happen to her, so let's wake her up. Hey you, I said, shaking Kate gently. Kate groaned and slowly opened her eyes. Hey, you, I repeated. Kate looked dazed for a moment before realizing her situation and freezing in shock. "We're going to have a talk now, so come over here, please." Kate remained frozen and didn't respond. "Come here, please." "Yes, yes," she replied reflexively after I spoke a bit more sternly. I called both of them to the dining room and had them sit side by side at the table. "I really don't want to have you sitting here, but well, you've already made yourself comfortable, haven't you? The table will do," I said, making it clear there would be no hospitality like tea. "Now, I want you to answer some questions. If you're honest, I might consider certain things, like maybe reducing the damages." You all the word damages turned their faces pale. "So, when did it start?" "What? When did the two of you start this relationship? Be honest, or the damn damages will double." Jack's eyes darted around nervously, and Kate just kept blinking rapidly. "Since when?" Today. Today was the first time, right?" "Yes, yes. A lot, really." Yes, we met today for the first time, and since you weren't here, we just got carried away." "Yes, yes," they both said, seemingly agreeing on the story. That's a lie." Ding dong. The people I had called arrived. I asked Jack and Kate to wait while I let my guests in the dining room. Two professionals, a man and a woman in suits, entered. Please, the woman took out an envelope, and the man opened his laptop. "Here, take a look." The screen showed yesterday's footage of Jack and Kate entering the room, followed by the interior video. "Hey, isn't this illegal filming?" "That's right, it's a crime," they protested while Jack and Kate were making a fuss. The detective agency explained everything properly. Indeed, secretly filming someone is voyeurism, but if it's for the purpose of catching evidence of infidelity, it's allowed. Moreover, this was a job undertaken by professionals, meaning the detectives from the agency following a request. Therefore, it doesn't constitute a criminal act. Got it. So this isn't a crime. Both Jack and Kate sat silently, heads bowed. Once again, when did it start? They didn't answer. Since when? You said today was the first time, but that's a lie, right? Well, yesterday, Jack began, raising his head to meet my eyes. I'm sorry. What I said earlier, it actually started yesterday. We drank too much, and one thing led to another. Yes, I'm sorry, they both apologized. So, you admit to the affair? Yes, we're sorry, but it was just this once. Sorry, it's true. It seemed they were trying to settle the matter with this version of the story. I told you before, if you lie, the damages will double. It's not a lie. Believe us, it's true. I brought over my laptop and placed it in front of them. If yesterday was the first time, then who are these people? I asked, showing them the photos and videos copied from Jack's smartphone, along with their social media interactions. Another lie. You're taking stuff from someone's smartphone. That's a crime. Sorry to disappoint you, but this also isn't a crime. You heard the reason just now, right? Jack and Kate had nothing more to say and just sat in silence. Eventually, they resigned themselves to telling the whole story. Their affair had started 2 years ago, around the time Kyle was born. Jack said he felt neglected and lonely after Kyle's birth and listed various reasons for his actions. That's when he met Kate, and their relationship continued until now. He described it as a momentary lapse of judgment and expressed regret. Kate looked at Jack with disbelief. Understandably so. She had been showered with sweet words all this time, only to be now referred to as a mistake. Kate, with tears in her eyes, admitted the time they started their relationship, but remained silent about the rest. It seemed futile to ask anything more. I'll arrange another day to talk with both your parents and Kate's parents. I thanked the detectives, sent them away, and also showed Kate out. Could you? You leave too. Maybe stay at a hotel or something. You might catch up with Kate if you're quick. I wouldn't do such a thing. Whatever, just leave. I made sure to send Jack out as well. Later, I arranged a meeting with both our parents and Jack's. My in-laws were mortified, just kept apologizing. My parents sat in silent anger. I showed them all the evidence, including the conversation from the day I caught. So, I want a divorce. I'll take custody of Kyle and demand child support and damages. Jack protested the amount I demanded, but I refused to budge. You've been deceiving me for 2 years and brought another woman into this house. Plus, you stopped contributing to the household expenses. My in-laws were shocked to hear this for the first time. My father-in-law even tried to hit Jack, but I stopped him. I don't want to see that. If you're going to do it, please do it where I can't see. My in-laws promised to cover the damages and child support. Regarding the apartment, I decided to take payment for my share of the mortgage up until now and then leave the rest to Jack. I don't want to live in a tainted house. Just pay me my share and then do whatever you want with it. It would probably end up being sold, but selling it now would only result in a loss. Jack had no capacity to keep up with the mortgage payments. It was unavoidable. I found out why Jack was fired from his company. He had caused significant losses to a client. Not just once, but multiple times. I thought it would definitely be profitable, but every single transaction I thought was surefire turned out badly. Jack explained he felt overshadowed by my success after I became independent and started earning more. In an attempt to outdo me, Jack did something he shouldn't have, making unauthorized stock trades for his clients, causing them losses. Trying to fill the gap he created, he kept repeating the same mistakes, and things became unmanageable. Yet he believed he would surely recover the losses someday, which is why he couldn't stop. Unaware that his company had caught on, he used his time with Kate to distract himself. That day, he had lied to the company, saying I was sick and he needed to care for me. Who would think they'd send a termination notice to a house with a sick person? Who's really being unreasonable here? It's hard to believe such words are coming from someone who lied to take time off work and go on a trip with another woman. Under these circumstances, the reason for his affair after Kyle was born, you stopped paying attention to me. That's to be expected when there's a baby. Even taking care of oneself becomes secondary, let alone catering to a grown man's needs like a child. Tired and unamused by my constant attention to Kyle, he met Kate at a bar and was drawn to her. Kate was young and pretty, and she listened to everything I said with interest. He regained the confidence he had lost. They started a deeper relationship after celebrating her 20th birthday. Kate was 19 when they first met. I bought Kate anything she wanted. Her asking for things was cute. Sarah, you earn enough to buy whatever you want, so you never ask me for anything. To fulfill Kate's wishes, he stopped contributing financially to our home. The apartment has always been your place. I just slept there, so I thought it was fair for you to pay for it. I remembered him saying that. Sarah, if you became a company employee again, you'd only be home for the same amount of time. Then it would be equal. So that's why he wanted me to stop working from home and commute instead. It's truly exasperating, the excuses Jack kept coming up with. None of them made any sense, no matter how I looked at it, but he blamed it all on me. If only Sarah had continued working like before and supported me, none of this would have happened, he said. Hearing these words, even my father-in-law broke down in tears. It was just pitiful, but that's no longer my concern. Because they paid the amount I wanted doesn't mean my wounds are healed or that I can forgive them. But they agreed to pay the damages and child support for Kyle that I demanded, so I have to accept it as good enough. I also demanded separate damages from Kate. Thankfully, her parents were responsible and paid everything on her behalf. I had said that lies would cost double, but I decided against it. I have my principles. I settled the matter within those bounds. I'm sorry, Kate apologized, appearing before me with her parents, looking completely different from the drunken Kate I had seen before. She honestly talked about her past. Kate, originally from a rural area, was astonished by the stark difference when she came to the city. Her college classmates all seemed fashionable, flashy, and dazzling. Trying to keep up, she started working at a bar. That's where I met Jack. He said he wasn't getting along with his wife, that they were about to divorce. It was just taking time because of the child. I believed him. Kate seemed to have genuinely loved Jack. Jack was handsome and well-paid. He bought me anything I asked for. I was happy that he listened to everything I said. That day, Jack had brought Kate to the apartment, saying they would soon live there together once I was gone. It seems he wanted to save on hotel costs, but Kate believed him. I thought we would soon live together here, and it made me happy. But then Jack referred to me as just a momentary lapse, Kate said with tears in her eyes. That's when I realized I was just being played. Her demeanor didn't seem deceitful, but I won't say I was deceived. I knew he was married and still got involved. It's my fault, I'm sorry. Kate and her parents apologized together. The truth is unclear. Perhaps Jack did have genuine feelings for Kate at some point. However, in the end, he chose to prioritize his interests. It seems that his understanding of the situation was ultimately shallow. He's someone who selfishly acts on whims, just like a child relying on his wife, then feeling neglected and unappreciated. Kate would be better off forgetting about such a man. Kate has since quit college and returned to the countryside with her parents to start over. I'll work and pay back what my parents covered as soon as possible. Although I once despised her, I now hope she finds a straight path in life and happiness. Afterward, Jack was fired from his company and sued for the losses he couldn't cover. That was expected. He lied to the company to take time off and was caught embezzling for his escapades. It wasn't just causing losses to clients. He used that money for personal enjoyment, which led to his judgment. Though he received a suspended sentence, his future is uncertain. I feel sorry for my in-laws, who were good people, but it was a deserved outcome. I've returned to my parents' home, where they help me with Kyle while I continue working. Despite the personal turmoil, my career is going well. Kyle's growth is now my sole comfort. For now, I think I don't need a man in my life. But like Kate, who's gone back to start anew, I too hope to meet someone truly trustworthy someday. I believe there's still someone good out there for me. Life is still long. It's too long to stumble over a single failure and give up. I want to show Kyle a forward-looking, resilient spirit, never to become someone who loses everything due to childish dependency like his father. For that reason, I will keep looking ahead, hold my head high, and keep walking. I will never give up on any happiness. My request for approval was promptly denied. It would be fine if it's the storage shed. I exclaimed, "Don't make a fool of me. Our house is fairly spacious. If the rooms were tidied up, there would be no problem having my father live with us. Truly, my husband's feelings for me and my family are less than that of a pet. Well then, I will sincerely clean up the storage shed and renovate it. Even the storage shed can be used just like a regular room if it's clean. There's meaning in living with my father now," I determined. Aaron, however, seemed unenthusiastic. "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" I recalled the major renovation we did to ensure my mother-in-law, who visits sometimes, would not have trouble staying over. We even installed a bathroom and toilet, similar to a hotel. I won't rely on such a demon-like man anymore. I made a decision. My name is Vivian Westhill, 52 years old. I help with the company my husband runs. My son, Matthew, has left home, and it's just the two of us living together. My mother-in-law sometimes comes over, but since her house is nearby, she doesn't live with us. Reflecting on how I met my husband nearly 30 years ago, I shared, I hate to say it myself, but I was famous for being good-looking in my hometown. My mother passed away in a traffic accident when I was in middle school, and I was living, helping each other out with my father. Although I was invited out by many men, they were nothing but a hindrance to me. I had a dream of becoming an accountant and was working hard towards that. Despite my popularity, I had a boyfriend of the same age. We would secretly call each other and go out to eat after part-time. I had no intention of dating anyone else. The only people I could let my guard down with were him and my father. He alone appreciated not my appearance, but my seriousness and true strength, among other aspects of my personality and way of thinking. I think we would have become a couple even if I wasn't the same appearance. That was the kind of relationship we had. However, everything changed one day when I returned home to find an unfamiliar family of 3 in my house. Seeing me, my father made a troubled face. I must have been more surprised. A known family introduced themselves. "We are the West Hills." Hearing the name West Hill made it click. A famous rich family in town. I wondered why they were in my house. "Welcome home, Vivian. Mr. West Hill here wants to take you as his wife." Shocked, I protested. "A wife? Marriage? What are you talking about?" I had never seen these 3 before. Everyone knows they hold significant influence in town as a wealthy family. Yet the talk of me becoming a bride was unbelievable. "Nice to meet you, Vivian. Our Aaron has fallen for you at first sight. He insists on having you as his wife." My would-be father-in-law began speaking. Despite feeling unreal, they didn't disappear, and I was told, "Take your time and talk it over with your father. We'll come back in a week to hear your answer." As they left, I pondered, could our fate be decided in just a week? It didn't seem real. I thought things like this only happened in dramas, and I couldn't believe it was happening to me. Stunned, I watched as the 3 of them left. "Dad, what's this about a debt? What's your relation with those people?" My father turned to me with a pale face, drained of all blood. "Vivian, I'm sorry. It's true. I was lonely and started drinking and gambling. Before I knew it, the money was gone, and I began borrowing to cover it. Everything I heard since coming home was beyond my capacity to accept." "Debts? Why didn't you tell me? I understand you were lonely after Mom suddenly passed away, but having a debt." I couldn't think calmly, naturally. I couldn't even talk about it calmly. This was indeed out of the blue. As far as I could remember, my father never got drunk or angry from losing at gambling. I didn't even know. Mr. West Hill invited me and introduced me to a place with Mr. West Hill's face. We could drink on a tab, and I didn't even know how much the bill was accumulating. The same thing with gambling. He let me buy lottery tickets together, and it just piled up. My father is truly a good person, not knowing how to doubt people. It must have been easy for someone like a scam artist. They must have been scheming from the start to trap my father and have their way with me. Interrupting my thoughts, I questioned, "Hold on a second. What happens to you if I don't marry their son?" In desperation, I pondered if there was any alternative. The looming threat of being pursued by debt collectors or sent to a work camp left me trembling. I clung to a shred of hope, suggesting, "There's no such thing as work camps these days. Can't you just keep working hard to pay it off?" My father's response was disheartening. "Sorry, Vivian, that's impossible. Debt collectors might start contacting my workplace. I might not be able to work anymore." Feeling completely cornered and with no more options to explore, I decided it was enough. There was nothing more to discuss. Despite wanting to vent my feelings of frustration, humiliation, and anger, I couldn't bring myself to do that to my father, who had always taken care of me. I packed my bags and made the immediate decision to go to the West Hill family. There was no use worrying about it. Making this decision wasn't easy, but considering the increasing interest on the debt, I couldn't cling to my home any longer. Marrying Aaron seemed to be the only way to resolve this, and before I could change my mind, I quietly left the house. That night, I arrived at the West Hills home and boldly knocked on the front door. "You're early. Seems like you're blinded by money, just like everyone else," Aaron remarked. Frustration boiled within me, and I wanted to scream that I didn't want any money and wasn't unhappy because I was poor. But his words treated me like a possession, objectifying, and disgusting. Leaving everything behind, I looked forward to being with him from now on, offering a forced greeting as I entered the West Hill household. After that, everything progressed in a whirlwind. Betrayed by my trusted father and breaking up with my beloved boyfriend, it felt like all my emotions had disappeared. The grand wedding with a local famous person, attended by many, blurred in my memory. The only vivid image was my father's haggard look, erasing my resentment towards him. Accepting this as my fate, I decided to change my outlook and enjoy my married life. Little did I know, that was just the beginning of a harrowing experience. Responsibilities piled up, from housework to assisting with the family business, and the pressure to have children took a toll on my mental state. My mother-in-law constantly nagged, and my husband's initial kindness turned into indifference. It was far from the sweet married life I had imagined. "You're completely useless. A woman from the club would be better. Just quietly do your job and chores," my husband declared, treating me like a housemaid. When I became pregnant, even severe morning sickness didn't evoke sympathy. "You're getting fat. Just do your chores and work properly. I don't know why I married you." I gave up on being acknowledged in this home. A wife from a poor family would never be seen as more than a servant. Frustrating as it was, for the sake of my unborn child, I had to endure. Eventually, I gave birth to a boy, but my husband, now with an heir, hardly ever came home. When he did, he reeked of strong perfume and alcohol, evidence of his time spent at clubs. However, my primary focus was on raising my child, so my husband's absence brought a sense of relief. Matthew, my son, grew up healthy and was easy to raise, despite my mother-in-law's persistent annoyance, claiming that Aaron would have been a better choice. I preferred Matthew not turning into a worthless man. My kind-hearted son aspired to become a doctor, and when he left for university, I felt a void in my heart. To fill that emptiness, I decided to dedicate myself more to my work. Around that time, my father-in-law, who had treated me as a human being, passed away. My mother-in-law moved to a condo near the downtown area, enjoying the inheritance from my father-in-law. With the loss of the person who had supported and cared for me like my own father, I began to miss my father. Taking advantage of my husband's indifference, I started talking to my father again, just like old times. Though it was challenging to speak without making my father feel guilty, one day he looked serious. When I asked what was wrong, he said in a resigned tone that he was diagnosed with malignant lymphoma and had only 6 months to live. I was utterly shocked and couldn't believe it. "No way, Dad, that can't be. You're so lively. It's impossible that you only have half a year left, just when we could finally be like a father and daughter again. I can't bear the thought of never seeing you again." Despite my emotional plea, my father smiled kindly and nodded. Wanting to ensure he wouldn't be alone, I decided to ask my husband to let him live with us in our spacious home. I'm not ready to give up, but at least I don't want him to be alone. My father expressed happiness hearing those words and left with a gentle smile. For the first time since getting married, I decided to confront my husband that night. As usual, he came home drunk with the smell of perfume. Seeing me awake and waiting for him, he looked startled. "What's the matter? Don't tell me you want some affection." It seemed he hadn't changed his view on women being objects. I looked straight at him and said, "Aaron, I have something important to talk about. My father has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and has only 6 months to live. I want him to live with us in this house. Of course, I won't let it be a bother to you. We can just use one of the vacant rooms in the house. That's okay, right? You will listen to such a request, won't you?" Since my husband was hardly at home, there should have been no reason to object. I took it for granted that he would agree. But the unexpected reply was, "Just leave that half-dead old man alone. I'm not going to let someone like that into the house. It'll ruin the atmosphere." "Absolutely not. If you want to do that, you can leave. I have no intention of living with a sick person." My request was flatly denied, and I felt like I had fallen into a gaping hole in the ground. In my heart, I screamed, "If you want, the shed is fine. Don't mock me. Our house is quite large, and there is no problem if my father moves in. After cleaning up a room, we can live without facing each other. My husband really holds feelings for me and my family that are less than that for a pet. Well then, I will seriously clean and renovate the storage shed. If the storage shed is cleaned, It can be used just like a normal room. There is meaning in living with my father now. However, my husband remained adamant, saying, "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" Recalling the major renovation I did for my mother-in-law, I decided not to rely on such a demon-like man anymore. Since then, I worked more than ever and visited my father when I had the time. Some days he seemed to be doing well, and other days he seemed to be doing badly. I couldn't feel alive every day unless I saw my father's face. I was only praying for my father's illness to be cured. Miraculously, my prayers seemed to be heard, as my father was still alive after 6 months. A bright light seemed to shine, and I started to live positively, little by little. About half a year after my father's confession, my husband came back with a pale face. I sensed that something serious had happened because he had never come back early since we got married. "Sit down. I have important news. I was told that I have cancer, and my life expectancy is short." Come to think of it, my husband had been looking pale lately. I thought it was due to drinking too much alcohol or lack of sleep. Strangely, I was not shocked. It was completely someone else's problem. Besides, everyone should take care of themselves. You were like, "Leave that half-dead man alone," right? "I'll do just as you said. If you want me to leave, I'm leaving." Oh yes, I found a lawyer for our divorce matters. I left the room without looking back. I decided to leave suddenly. But I did not regret it at all. "You don't have a penny, do you? Where do you think you're going, leaving this house? You won't be able to live a luxurious life like you have been. You have been living on everything I have worked hard for, you inhuman." Does he still think that I have been living in this house for money? I had been subjected to brainwashing through my mother-in-law and endured verbal abuse from my husband, believing that I needed to stay and protect this house. However, since learning about my father's terminal diagnosis 6 months ago, I woke up to the realization that I couldn't continue living like this. During this time, I mentally prepared myself for divorce, ready to leave the house at any moment. My husband continued to shout something in the background, but it no longer concerned me. I never aspired for a luxurious life. All I needed was the ability to eat 3 meals a day and a place to sleep. I returned to my room, packed only the essentials into my suitcase, and left the house. Whether my husband faced trouble or not, it didn't matter to me. I promptly sent the email I had drafted, resigning from my position to the company's president. I aimed to settle everything related to my husband and the West Hill family, which I had been supporting for nearly 30 years. In fact, since discussing my father's situation half a year ago, I had been in contact with a divorce specialist lawyer recommended by the company's advisory lawyer. I shared everything about our marriage, starting from events before our marriage. The lawyer listened quietly, nodding in understanding. When I mentioned that I had been working for the family business without pay, the lawyer was genuinely surprised. It would amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid salary. After finishing my story, he immediately commented that the divorce should be straightforward. I had also gathered evidence of my husband's faults, including photos of emails from other women and notes documenting serious moral harassment. Additionally, I had recorded his verbally abusive remarks on my smartphone. While that evidence was sufficient, the lawyer also provided photos of my husband's infidelity for free. He assured me that everything would go well, even if I didn't take further action. He urged me to feel like I was on a big ship and didn't need to answer the angry calls from my husband, as he would handle everything. I walked with a smile, naturally ignoring the angry calls. Amidst the calls from my husband, there were also calls from my mother-in-law, likely questioning if I planned to abandon everything when my son was in trouble. If her son was in trouble, she should take care of him herself. Although a luxurious room resembling a show home awaited her return to that house, she seemed panicked. The company started by my father-in-law was falling apart without me, who had been a crucial support. The president, who was more of a decoration due to ESS, couldn't steer the company effectively, and things were not going well. Some colleagues had reached out, asking me to come back, but I had no intention of dedicating myself to the company any longer. Despite its local significance, the number of clients would steadily decrease. While I felt sorry for letting my father-in-law's hard-earned company decline, I believed that if my husband and mother-in-law had worked as diligently as him, this wouldn't have happened. My decision to quit might have been different, and my son Matthew might have considered taking over the family business. Furthermore, my husband not only contributed little to the company, but also seemed to constantly engage in inappropriate behavior with female employees, leading to suspicions and resignations. It appears that those women are planning to sue the company for sexual harassment. Now, my husband has to handle the repercussions of the mess he created in his life, and it seems that justice is catching up with him. I desired justice for my husband and mother-in-law, wanting them to face proper consequences so that those who had worked honestly wouldn't be made to look foolish. To add to the turmoil, the company faced accusations of tax evasion by the IRS, discovered accidentally while my lawyer was investigating. Further examination revealed questionable points in the accounts, raising suspicions of my husband's embezzlement. Looking back, it was odd that he had substantial money at his disposal, considering his salary. While assisting with the accounting, I had been indifferent to my husband's financial activities, not realizing the disparity between his income and expenditures. If I had questioned where the excess funds were coming from, I would have understood the truth. In reality, he'd have been squandering the company's money, including my salary that he had transferred to his own account. Kickbacks for orders, bribes for personal gain, tax evasion, and special embezzlement. My husband's crimes were diverse. I couldn't predict whether the court's judgment or his life expectancy would come first, but I desired him to atone for as much as possible. 6 months ago, I began scrutinizing the books, copying them to preserve evidence, and submitting them to the IRS. My prior study to become an accountant proved beneficial in this endeavor. To bridge the financial gap, my husband sold the company to a major corporation and hastily disposed of the large mansion at a bargain. My mother-in-law also sold her condo to meet the IRS obligations and pay me. Now they live together in a small apartment complex, and rumors suggest my husband has several children from affairs, necessitating child support payments. Despite his age, my husband seems to have life insurance, but its adequacy is uncertain. My mother-in-law, previously condescending, now works to cover her son's medical and living expenses. The parent and child should reflect on their actions until the end. Receiving a substantial amount, I purchased a condo in a convenient location. I reunited with my father, who is now recovering, thanks to Matthew's introduction to a renowned doctor. My father had been living with Matthew, saving money for me to free me from financial burdens. Matthew, considering my father more respectable than his own, agreed to my request. Living together until the condo was secured, I chose a place close to Matthew's home. I started working at the law firm that aided me, contributing to corporate cases. Despite not being an accountant, my experience is an asset, and I'm studying to acquire a tax accountant qualification. My husband is serving an actual imprisonment sentence, relieving concerns about money or sustenance. Ironically, my mother-in-law moved into a relative's house, experiencing what it's like to be in need after acting superior for so long. Seeking justice for my mistreatment, I'm astounded by the prevalence of power and sexual harassment in various transactions. I worried about potential job losses due to the company acquisition, but it seems to have worked out for most. As everything falls into place, I savor the happiness that comes from knowing I made the right choices. Returning home from work, I find my father and another man waiting. It's my ex-boyfriend, the person I truly loved. After nearly 30 years, he welcomes me back warmly. My father, who had apologized to him when I escaped from the troubled house, knew about my ex-boyfriend. The 3 men, including Matthew, were watching over me. Now, I plan to live with these 3 men whom I genuinely love from the bottom of my heart. I am Helen Collins, a 29-year-old who works at the local library in an obscure small town. My life is characterized by simplicity, perhaps too simple for some, but it is uniquely mine. Being the quiet type, I've always found solace in the company of books rather than the clamor of the outside world. The library, an old and cozy building with creaky floors and weathered shelves, is my sanctuary. Despite its imperfections, it is perfect to me. Each day at 8 o'clock a.m., I'd open the library doors, turn on the lights, and savor the familiar scent of books. This routine, although repetitive, never loses its charm. My parents passed away when I was young, leaving me in the care of my grandmother. She was a kind soul who encouraged my love for reading and learning. However, she's no longer here, and I find myself alone in the world. No siblings, no close relatives, just me and my small world. "Good morning, Helen." Mr. Jenkins, a regular visitor, greets me as he strolls in. He's an elderly man who spends his days immersed in history books. I reciprocate the greeting with a smile and inform him of the new shipment of history books that arrived yesterday. The day unfolds with familiar faces coming and going. I assist a group of kids in finding books for their school project. Recommend a romance novel to Mrs. Harrison, and guide Mr. Thompson to the science fiction section. It's a quiet life, but one that brings me comfort. Then, everything changes on the day Jack enters my life. He walks into the library looking for a book, but he doesn't fit the typical profile of a library visitor. His crisp suit and confident stride set him apart. "Can you help me find a book?" he asks, his voice smooth and inviting. "Of course. What are you looking for?" I reply, attempting to maintain composure. "It's a novel. The Great Gatsby, I believe," he says, and I lead him to the classics section. As I hand him the book, our hands brush briefly, sending a jolt through me. It's a simple touch, but it lingers in my mind. "Thank you, Helen," he says, reading my name tag. "I'm Jack. It's nice to meet you." This brief encounter marks the beginning of a profound change, a love I thought would last a lifetime and a journey that would take me from the quiet life I knew into a world of chaos and betrayal. Little did I know that life doesn't come with a warning label, and sometimes we just have to learn the hard way. Following that first meeting, Jack becomes a frequent visitor to the library. Despite not appearing to be the reading type, he consistently seeks book recommendations and engages in conversations with me. One day, as I struggle with a box of newly arrived books, he offers to help, and our interactions grow longer with each visit. I discovered that Jack was involved in his family's real estate business, and he proved to be easy to talk to. For the first time in a while, it felt like someone was genuinely interested in me. Then, one day, he surprised me with an invitation. "Helen, would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" His eyes held a hopeful expression. Taken aback, I asked, "Like a date?" He smiled and confirmed, "Yes, like a date." Despite the unfamiliar territory, there was something about him that made me want to say yes. "Okay, sure. I'd like that," I replied, attempting to keep my voice steady. We chose a cozy but not fancy restaurant in town. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing, and for a few hours, I forgot about my typically solitary life. Walking home, Jack expressed, "I had a really great time tonight, Helen. You're very different from the people I usually meet." Unsure of how to respond, I simply smiled. He continued, "I'd like to see you again. Would that be okay?" I nodded, "Yes, I'd like that." From then on, we started seeing each other more regularly, going out to dinner or taking walks. It felt nice to be part of something beyond books and quietness. Before long, I found myself falling hard for him. Jack was charming, attentive, and made me feel special. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Looking back, I wish I had seen the signs, known that his charm masked something less pleasant. Love has a way of blinding you, making you ignore warning signs. I was deeply in love, or at least I believed I was. After Jack and I got engaged, things began to change. It started with his disapproving parents, who considered me beneath their son due to my lack of wealth. Meeting them at their opulent house for dinner was nerve-wracking. Margaret and Richard made it clear they didn't like me, questioning my suitability for Jack. Despite their disapproval, Jack stood up for me, strengthening my love for him. Before our wedding, his parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement, claiming it was a formality. With little to lose, I agreed without fuss. After marriage, I moved into Jack's house, a gift from his parents that they still treated as theirs. His parents frequented the house unannounced, issuing orders without hesitation. I refrained from causing trouble, silently enduring their constant reminders that nothing in the house was mine. Jack changed too, no longer the man I fell in love with. He began joining in on his parents' jokes at my expense, and one evening, I faced the dilemma of choosing an outfit for a family event and sought Jack's opinion. "This one makes you look less drab," he said, laughing. His words stung. It felt like he transformed into a different person around his parents. The support I once received had vanished. Instead, he joined in their laughter. Living in that house became exhausting, and I felt like an outsider, a guest unwelcome in my own home. Despite hoping for improvement, the situation only worsened. The stress took a toll on my health, resulting in severe stomach pains. Ignoring them proved futile, and one day I collapsed at the library. Waking up in the hospital, the doctor attributed it to stress, keeping me hospitalized for a few days. Jack neither visited nor called, leaving me feeling utterly alone. Unexpectedly, a notary arrived with life-changing news. My almost forgotten great-aunt had passed away, leaving me a fortune of $30 million. The sudden windfall transformed my status from the impoverished library girl to someone with significant wealth. When Jack and his parents learned of my inheritance, they visited, showering me with smiles and sweetness. "Darling, we're so happy for you." Margaret feigned concern. Richard chimed in, "We're a family. We should support each other." Skeptical of their sudden change, I'd overheard their conversation outside my room. Their true intentions became clear. They viewed me as a means to secure their financial future. Disturbed by their greed, I knew I had to escape their clutches and regain control of my life. Leaving the hospital, I returned home to find Jack and his parents waiting, playing the roles of a caring family. They expressed worry and curiosity about my inheritance. Jack, the man I thought I loved, had become unrecognizable. "When do you get the inheritance?" he asked eagerly. Realizing the depth of deception, I replied, "Soon, but it's not something you need to worry about." Jack, however, asserted the idea of marital entitlement. That night, haunted by their insincere concern and greed, I couldn't sleep. Fueled by years of frustration, I began documenting every detail of their actions and words. The next morning, armed with evidence, I met with a lawyer. Shocked by the situation, he'd assured me that the prenuptial agreement would protect my interests. Empowered by this revelation, I returned home to find Jack and his parents in the living room. "There she is, our brave girl," Richard greeted with a falsely warm smile. Clutching my purse, I gathered the courage to speak. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice unwavering. The room fell silent as I declared, "I'm filing for divorce." The shock rippled through the room, and Margaret erupted in anger, threatening legal action to claim a share of my inheritance. I delved into my purse and retrieved a copy of the prenuptial agreement. "Actually, you can't. This states that neither of us can claim the other's property in case of divorce," I calmly pointed out. For the first time, they were left speechless, and I seized control of the situation. Standing up, I declared, "I'm leaving. I don't want any of you to contact me." Walking out of that house, their shouts and insults trailed behind me. It was the most challenging thing I'd ever done, but as I drove away, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt free from their disdain and manipulation. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Despite uncertainties about the future, I rented a small apartment in the city. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine. A sense of peace washed over me, and even though I was still dealing with the divorce, I felt equipped to handle it. One day, the lawyer called with information about my great-aunt's will. Intrigued, I inquired, "What about it?" He revealed a condition. I had to use a portion of my inheritance for a charitable cause, fulfilling my great-aunt's final wish. Surprised, I learned she was a philanthropist, and it felt like a sign, pushing me in a new direction. I started researching charities and causes, seeking something meaningful. That's when I discovered a small organization aiding women victims of domestic abuse. Touched by their cause, I contacted them, met with Linda, and decided to fund a new shelter. A few weeks later, at the shelter's opening, the atmosphere buzzed with hope and gratitude. Among the attendees, I spotted a familiar face, Sarah, an old colleague from the library. Reconnecting with her felt like pieces of my life falling back into place. The days blended together as I immersed myself in the rewarding work at the shelter, finding a new sense of purpose. Unexpectedly, my phone rang, displaying a number I hadn't seen in a while. Jack. With a mix of emotions but curious, I answered. "Hello, Jack." He urgently requested a meeting, claiming he made a huge mistake and wanted me back. Sitting across from him at a public coffee shop, he seemed different, defeated, and almost pitiful. "Helen, I made a huge mistake. I want you back. I've realized how much you mean to me," he confessed. Looking at him, I felt nothing but contempt. "Why now, Jack?" His sigh revealed. "My parents controlled everything. They were the reason our marriage failed. I was weak, but I'm different now." A surge of anger enveloped me. "You blame your parents, but you stood by while they treated me like dirt." "You laughed with them, Jack," I asserted. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Please, Helen, I know I was wrong." "I've changed," he pleaded. Staring at him, I saw the man I once loved, but now I felt nothing for him. Changed or not, it's too late. "I feel nothing for you, Jack, nothing but contempt." His face fell, and for a brief moment, I glimpsed the man I married, but it faded. "I'm sorry, Jack. I've moved on. I have a life now, a purpose. There's no place for you in it," I said firmly. He nodded slowly, a look of resignation on his face. "I understand. I just had to try." Leaving the coffee shop, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. It was truly over. The next day, an event took place at the shelter. A local artist had donated a sculpture to be unveiled in the garden. Surrounded by people who supported and believed in me, I felt a sense of belonging. Sarah, my old colleague from the library, stood beside me. "You've done something amazing here, Helen," she said, smiling. The artist revealed the sculpture, a figure of a woman reaching up to the sky, symbolizing hope, strength, and new beginnings. Applause filled the air, and for a moment, everything felt right in the world. Linda, the woman who had helped me, approached. "Helen, this is just the beginning. There's so much more we can do." Looking around at hopeful faces, I knew she was right. This was my new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it fully. My new life was busy and fulfilling. Each day at the shelter brought new challenges and rewards. My confidence grew, and for the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. I even started taking self-defense classes, something I never imagined doing before. One day, as I left the shelter, I saw a car park outside. My mother-in-law, Margaret. Stepping out, she said, "Helen, we need to talk." Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard. "I have nothing to say to you, Margaret," I replied, my voice steady. "Please just hear me out. I've realized how wrong we were," she pleaded. I stopped and looked at her. She seemed genuine, but I couldn't forget the past. "What do you want, Margaret?" "I want to apologize. I treated you terribly. I've lost my son because of it, and I don't want to lose you too." "You were like the daughter I never had," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I pushed it away. "Margaret, you made my life a living hell. An apology won't change that. I've moved on, and I suggest you do the same," I said firmly. She reached out to me, but I stepped back. "Please, Helen, I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make things right." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. Goodbye, Margaret." As I walked away, I felt her gaze on my back, but I didn't look back. I had learned to stand up for myself, and there was no going back to the way things were. The next day, I received a letter from Jack's lawyer. He was contesting the divorce settlement. I wasn't surprised, but I was ready. Meeting with my lawyer, Rachel, she reassured me. He's got no leg to stand on, Helen. The prenuptial agreement is clear. He's just trying to intimidate you. I nodded. I'm not afraid of him anymore. Let's fight this. The court date arrived, and I walked in with my head held high. Jack was there with his lawyer, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was a flash of the old Jack, the one I had loved, but it vanished quickly. The judge listened to both sides and then made her decision. The prenuptial agreement stood, and Jack's claims were dismissed. I felt a surge of relief and triumph. After the court session, Jack approached me. Helen, I'm sorry. I was wrong, he said, his voice low. I looked at him, seeing the man I once loved but now felt nothing for. Goodbye, Jack. Take care of yourself, I said and walked away. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of closure. That chapter of my life was finally over, and a new one was just beginning. At the shelter, we were planning a fundraiser, and it was taking all my attention. The support from the community was overwhelming, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The night of the fundraiser arrived, and the place was buzzing with energy. People from all walks of life had come to support our cause. As I looked around, I realized how far I had come, from a quiet, timid woman to someone who stood up for herself and others. Helen, you did it. This is amazing, Sarah said, coming up to me. I smiled. We did it. And there's so much more to do. As the event went on, I felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. This was my life now, and I was exactly where I was meant to be.